Chapter 50. Mount Hua, 4, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Mount Hua, 4. It's been 10 days since I left my clan to go to Mount Hua. If I had to list one thing that made this trip different from the Sichuan trip, it was that I couldn't relax during this trip. Young master, are you feeling alright? Why? Yes, you do not need to worry about me. It was because of the person who was acting as the coachman, one of the heavenly venerables, the Sword Emperor himself. Just why did he have to be the one driving the carriage that I'm riding when there were other carriages available? Thanks to that, I felt like I was going to die from the discomfort these past 10 days. To be fair, it was probably because YCOL.A was in the carriage I was riding as well, but in the end, it made me feel uncomfortable. I would have honestly felt better if I was the one driving the carriage instead. For fuck's sake. Nguyen, how long until we arrive? I looked outside the window and spoke to Nguyen. It was a pointless question. Nguyen responded to me with a stiff smile. Young master. I feel as if you have asked the same question 30 times by now. Right. I had a feeling I asked that question before. To say it again, we still have a long way to go. Makes me sad every time I hear it, huh? This absurdly vast land of this world. While I was heaving a sigh, YCOL.A approached me and began speaking. Young master. What is it? What's your favorite dumpling? What kind of nonsense are you talking about for you to ask what my favorite dumpling is, rather than asking something about my favorite food? But the young master only eats dumplings. She wasn't wrong, so I couldn't really argue with that point. We got to the point of talking about what my favorite dumpling is, huh? I just like all dumplings. Why is that? It's cheap while also being rich in quantity. It was as simple as that. They were cheap and rich in quantity. Also, they were delicious. There were probably many types of dumplings, but I wasn't really picky about them. As long as they were cheap, rich in quantity, and tastier than ration pills, I was fine with it. I've had stuff worse than ration pills before, so as long as they tasted like actual food, I ate them. YCOL.A tilts her head in confusion upon hearing my response. Weird, the servant sisters told me that the young master was picky with his food, not anymore. I was picky before. When I was young, I was stubborn and only looked for expensive quality food for some reason. But later on I was able to realize that all of that was pointless as I neared my death. Just eat it already, god damn it, fucking hell, how am I supposed to eat this? Do you really think a centipede's tail is food? You think I eat it because I want to? I eat it so I can live, you idiot. That I'm not going to eat it. If you aren't going to, then give it to me. I'm going to eat more rather than protecting my pride. I'm going to admit it now, but the centipede's tail didn't taste too bad. To be more specific, it was better than most things I could find there. I had to drink beast's blood rather than water, and had to consume poison while fully aware of its contents, just to fill up my belly. What a shitty memory. I feel sick now. Thinking of this memory made me feel like vomiting. YCOL.A, who checked on my condition, took something out in a hurry. It was a yagua. Why did she take out a yagua and not something like medicine? Then, YCOL.A spoke to me with a trembling voice. Do you want a bite? You offer me not even one piece, but one bite. But this is my last one. After hearing YCOL.A's words, I moved my neck to reach for the yagua. I pretended to take only one bite, but ate all of it at once instead. No, YCOL.A's scream echoed in the carriage. Basically, today summed up everything that's happened over the past 10 days. Very pointless. When it became night, we, like before, had to set up a camp. The horses had to rest, and we too had to rest our bodies as this was a long trip. The escort set up a campfire and went on to look out for any danger as if they were waiting to do so. They were keeping a night watch rather early. Both Ycol. And the Sword Emperor left the carriage. Moreover, excluding the nearby escorts, I was left alone in the carriage. After positioning myself in the correct posture, I slowly released my fire chi. I felt my chi begin to spread throughout my whole body from my abdomen, empowering me. With every breath, I saw red chi come out of my body. It meant that I was very close to reaching the 4th rank. When chi is released outside the body for too long, it starts going out of control. I felt my chi become rougher and more awkward to control. That was the limit of being at the 3rd realm. If I continued doing this for any longer, my body would be damaged. Once I break the wall to reach the next rank, I wouldn't have this problem, but my physical body was what prevented me from breaking that wall. Again, this physical body of mine. I kept trying again and again because of my impatience, but I kept facing the same wall each time. I feel so impatient, both in my mind and in my situation. I withdrew my chi back into my body as I realized that I couldn't rush this process no matter how greedy I felt. It was important for me to learn how to be patient when it came to transcending to a new level. After all, patience was the most important part when it came to reaching a new level. However, the reason why I kept trying was not only because I wanted to reach the 4th realm, but also to enhance my chi. Little by little, I would strengthen my base and get rid of all the impure chi. With that, the improved chi would help me gain more growth in the future. Sigh. I found it funny how I was thinking of all of this. I thought I'd left all my greed for martial arts in the past. I told myself to only become strong enough to protect myself, and it's only been a few months since. Yet I'm becoming greedier after I got the power from the snake. I guess I had to face the fact that I truly was a martial artist after all. After all of the heat went away, I was able to notice how quiet it was at night. The chirping sounds of bugs echoed in my ear as I leaned back in my chair. I was out of energy after finishing my training. Whenever I'm in a situation like this, I would only think about stuff like what to do in the future or sins I'd committed in the past which would just hurt my head. But recently, those thoughts don't come to mind anymore. It was thanks to the scent of plums that permeated throughout the inside of the carriage. I even felt a bit dizzy from the scent after withdrawing my chi. If you are wondering why I'm suddenly talking about some plum scent, it was because of the stone that I was carrying in my pocket. Give me a break. I had to smile blankly at the scent that stabbed my nose. It was the treasure I got from the 2nd elder that was producing the scent of plums. At first, it didn't give off any smell due to it being wrapped in cloth, but ever since a few days ago, it started to give off the scent even when it was still wrapped up in cloth. I didn't put much thought into it since it was a treasure and all, but today was especially bad. How did something like this even come to exist? I carefully took out the wrapped up stone. Something like a treasure was considered to be truly mysterious, even in the future. This stone that produced the smell of plums was no exception. Whether it was the Namgung clan's sword enveloped by lightning or the statue of Shaolin's sect holding a mysterious light within itself, they were all similar. They all broke the laws of nature. Things like those were called treasures, but it was still hard to explain why those things even came to exist in the first place. I just knew that they did. After observing the stone in my hand for a bit, I put it back into my pocket. If I broke the stone accidentally while playing with it, I would have had to run far away from Mount Hua rather than going there in the first place. Even after I put the stone back into my pocket, the scent still lingered in the carriage. It's hard to witness a plum blossom in this season. Yet I've embraced the scent of it in this carriage. I'd even begun to hallucinate the leaves of plum flowers blowing because of the scent. I must be tired. I rubbed my eyes, but the leaves still remained. I thought that I must have been really tired, so I decided to lie down. It would have been more comfortable for me to sleep outside since they had probably finished setting up the camp, but I felt especially tired today. Yeah, let's just close my eyes for a bit and finish my training later. With that thought, I relaxed my body. While I was about to fall asleep, I slightly heard a voice while feeling fuzzy. Who the hell is this? Wherever it came from, it was the voice of an old man I'd never heard before. That I don't think this guy is from Mount Hua. Is this a dream? Am I having a nightmare again? How is a kid that's not from Mount Hua eating up all this chi? While I was still feeling dim and fuzzy, the old man sounded like he was extremely angry. Oh my God, what am I even witnessing? What blood do you have for you to consume all of this? You're gonna get sick at this rate. It felt like someone was tapping my cheek, telling me to wake up. But my haggard body made it too hard for me to move, for fuck's sake. After hearing his angry voice for a long time, the voice seemingly disappeared after giving up. And when I finally woke up from my sleep, what the? Funnily enough, my destructive flame art reached the fourth realm. Asterisk 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 asterisk. The chi that surrounded my hand swayed wildly. Even though just yesterday, my chi had barely given off a small heat haze, it had changed this much. This was the proof that my flame art reached the fourth realm. I was only able to continue staring at the flame dumbfoundedly, but this was the reality. What? What the hell happened? Yesterday, my body refused to escape the third realm of flame arts, but all of a sudden I reached the fourth realm the next morning. I was speechless from how nonsensical this was. Although I was happy because I wanted this to happen, I still felt frustrated as I didn't know how it happened. My physique was the same as before. While the body may have remained the same, my chi felt strangely calmer. The chi that flowed throughout my body didn't feel rough, but instead felt calm and fluid. Thanks to that, it didn't take a toll on my body and I was able to control the flow of chi. Fluid, huh? No matter how much I thought about it, that word did not fit the characteristics of destructive flame arts at all. If I had to compare this chi to another, I would have to say it's most similar to Mount Hua's chi. The art known for being as wild as a beast seemed similar to Mount Hua's chi. This was absurd. And the biggest problem was, the normally flame-like red chi was instead looking strangely lighter. How should I say this? It feels like I've seen this chi before. After I took out the stone that was in my pocket with shaky hands, I then started to unwrap the cloth. Please don't tell me. God, please. Please. Is it because I begged for it so much? Thankfully, there wasn't any problem with the stone. I would always become anxious around stones because lately, whenever I hold some weird-looking stones, I'd end up absorbing the power within them against my will. And if I accidentally absorbed whatever was inside of this stone, I would have had to live in a corner somewhere hiding far away from Mount Hua. So because of that, the stone not having any problem whatsoever was very significant to me. But even after letting out a sigh of relief, I was able to notice something different about the stone. Doviko, I feel like the light got a bit dimmer. I felt like the light that should have lit up the whole carriage was now dimmer than usual. Nah, it's just a mistake. It has to be. Just in case. Let's just put it somewhere else rather than me carrying it around. I think it's better for me to lose the stone rather than destroying the treasure with my own hand. No, I think both would end up making my life a living hell. Fuck, why was I given something like this? I really felt vengeful towards the second elder who made me deliver this thing. It's fine. They wouldn't notice as long as I give it to them while pretending to not know anything. My main goal of coming here wasn't the stone anyways, but instead bringing my little sister back to the clan. As long as that didn't conflict with my main goal, it was fine. And if it wasn't fine, I would make it fine. That's what I had thought then. I came here as I was curious about something. But I forgot about one important thing. I am young Peng of Mount Hua. That I had really shitty luck. Fuck. Chapter 51. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 1. The Namgung clan, the pillar of the orthodox factions, is a clan that specializes in sword art and had reached the pinnacle. To have endlessly trained their body and put all of their learnings into their sword, and to have never stopped their training even after they've reached their peak. That was what it meant to be a wielder of the sword. The chi that the descendants of the Namgung clan used and all of the sword arts they had invented proved that they were masters of the sword, and they were known as the greatest until the Sword Emperor made his appearance into the world, which caused the clan's reputation to take a hit. Sword Emperor was a title that belonged to Wei Hyegun. And although Namgung Gyalchen, the Lord of Heaven and another one of the Heavenly Venerables, had gotten a title for himself as well, it wasn't the one he desired. He wanted to walk above the sky as a sword wielder, but since that title had already been given to Wei Hyegun, it was all meaningless to him. Furthermore, while Namgung Chanjin may have gotten the title of Lightning Sword as one of the world's young prodigies, he still wasn't the greatest among them despite his talent. That was Gu Huibi, the Sword Phoenix. To make things worse, Namgung Chanjin wasn't even able to earn the title of Sword Dragon. He was only called the Lightning Dragon because that was the element he used, but he wasn't able to earn the title of Sword Dragon despite being from a clan known for their sword arts. Because of that, Namgung Chanjin had done all that he can change that, but the result ended up the same. The title of Sword Dragon belonged to Mount Hua rather than the Namgung clan in this generation. The plum-blossoming Sword Dragon of Mount Hua is the youngest sword wielder in the sect and a man who would be later known as the plum-blossoming Sword Emperor in the future. He was a man with endless talents when it came to the sword, a genius who could already make plums blossom at a young age, setting a good future for himself in the process. And that man was now standing right before me. He appeared to be around 2 or 3 years older than me with his hair tied up neatly. And although he was a handsome man with eyes that gave an innocent impression, there was still a bit of seriousness mixed in as well. "Young master." The Sword Dragon asked me a question. "How come I can feel Mount Hua within you?" And it was then that I knew I was fucked. This happened not too long ago. It's been a week since I reached the 4th realm of flame arts, and it's been 15 days since I left for Mount Hua. I remember Muyan's eyes shaking like crazy when he saw me in the morning suddenly at the 4th rank of flame arts. To put a comparison to before, I now felt like I could beat someone like Namgung Chanjin easily if we were to duel again. Of course, it would be different if he also improved during this time as well. I now felt like I reached the power akin to the young prodigies of the world by this point. From Muyan's perspective, it was a huge achievement for me to reach that state at such a young age. And although this all happened thanks to some miracles of some sort, in the end, what mattered was that I had reached the 4th realm of flame arts. I was now able to strengthen my body while also keeping the heat inside my body rather than putting it outside, which made it much easier for me to continue using my chi without putting a significant toll on my body. Of course, this technique ate up a ton of chi, so I probably wouldn't be able to use it for long periods of time. Creak. Thud. A demon collapsed on the ground after letting out a cry. Because such a big body fell to the ground at once, dust spread out everywhere. When I looked at the demon on the ground, it was a demon that resembled a horse. Green Demonic Horse was the name of it, I believe. This thing came out of nowhere, and scared the hell out of me. Blaze. After the hunt had ended, I withdrew the chi I covered my body with. The reason why I killed a demon out of nowhere was that while I was taking a walk, a gate of demons had appeared right in front of me. And since I wanted to test my 4th realm of flame arts, I went ahead of the escorts to fight the demon myself. And Muyan didn't bother to stop me as he noticed the new level of power I had achieved. I definitely felt different compared to before when I fought the demon. The toll that was brought on my body due to the heat was reduced by a lot. And the destructiveness and the speed of my attacks had also improved. I believe I was now at the same level as first-rate martial artists. And it was extremely fast considering my young age. To give a comparison, Gu Huibi reached the 4th realm of flame arts at the age of 17. And she was considered the greatest of the Gu clan in history, so I can't imagine all the attention I would get once I returned home. I would probably get the most attention from the second elder. He would probably run at me with a monstrous smile. And on the other hand, I would assume the first elder would also be unhappy with this. He didn't make a move ever since the interaction between me and Gujiliab, but I would assume that he is planning something behind the scenes. I'm just hoping that it wasn't anything bad. If possible, I'd just prefer him just not do anything at all. I hoped that he wouldn't get even more greedy, and that he would maintain his current position. It would be a hassle to get rid of an old wolf that tried to use its fangs. But if he does show his fangs, I would have to pull all of them out. Did you say something, young master? Nothing, I just have a tooth cavity, but it doesn't hurt so I didn't bother pulling it out. A cavity? Yeah, I hope that it stays painless. I would have to pull it out once it starts hurting. If I let it stay even if it's giving me pain, it would all rot so I had to pull them out. Investigation is done. One of the escorts shouted. I asked Muyin with an interested expression. What are you gonna do with the bones and the leather? We will bring a small portion of them, but I think we'll have to leave most of it behind. What a pity. The bones and the leathers of a demon sold for a good amount of money. The leather of demons was much stronger and more durable than animal leather, so they were more desired. And although this was the leather of the lowest rank of demons, it could still sell for a good amount, so I was a bit disappointed. And we are not even halfway there. It felt like it's been a long time, but we still had to go much further. I felt like such a retard to go on this trip after getting hooked by Heavenly Pill. Nah, this is Heavenly Pill we are talking about here. Yeah, this is worth it for Heavenly Pill. I was spending all my days coping with that thought. Long trips definitely weren't for me. After sitting down in the carriage and waiting for us to start going again, YC Dada who was next to me started to sniff me. Huh, is she a dog now? I flicked her head because of her strange actions. Ow. YC Dada backed off after letting out a short cry. And it was then that I remembered that the Sword Emperor was leading this carriage. I hit his granddaughter right in front of him, and because of that, cold sweats flowed down my face while me also getting goosebumps. When I took a small peek at the Sword Emperor, he was still on the horse, not really caring about what had happened. What's up, why are you sniffing me all of a sudden? I couldn't ask, why are you acting like a dog in front of the Sword Emperor, so I asked her the nicest way possible. YC spoke while rubbing her forehead. I can smell the scent of flowers on the young master. What scent of flowers? I don't know. I could smell it though. To YC Dada's words, I pointed to the corner of the carriage. It's probably coming from there, not me. At the corner of the carriage, was a small box that had the treasure inside. I had to look for a box because of all the scent that would linger around me if I put it in my pocket. Thanks to that, it was easier for me to store without also having all that scent around me. I would look back at the box from time to time just in case anything happened, but that was fine. It was better than me accidentally absorbing the chi of a treasure. No, it's definitely coming from the young master. I ignored YC Dada's mumblings. I saw her speak to herself while holding the box with the treasure in it earlier, so I was leaving her alone as I thought she was just acting weird today. What did she say? Hello, stranger grandpa, who are you? Something like that. I didn't want to talk to her since she was probably really tired today. I was definitely not scared because she was talking to herself. There are no ghosts in the world. I didn't believe in ghosts even after time resurrecting. I'm going to say it again, but I'm not scared of ghosts. No way a demonic human is scared of ghosts. I ignored the cold sweats that for some reason flowed down my face, and closed my eyes. The only thing in my mind was to reach Mount Hua as soon as we can. This long of a trip, no way I'd do such a thing again. After returning from this trip, I'm just going to stay home for at least 1 year, that was my promise to myself. The carriage continued to travel a long way. While I was half asleep. Before it became night, we had to go as far as we could, so we continued to go without any breaks. And after traveling for a long time, the carriage suddenly came to a halt. And because it stopped so suddenly, my body shot out forward. Whoa! YCOL also was about to fall. While I was still barely awake, I first put chi around YCOL and blocked her with my arm so that she doesn't get hurt. It wasn't going to be a strong fall, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Thanks to that, only YCOL's hair was messed up but she wasn't hurt anywhere. I then opened the door and got out of the carriage. What's up? I spoke in a slightly angry tone without me even realizing it. It was probably because my sleep was interrupted. When I left the carriage with a frown on my face, someone was standing in front of the escorts. Huh. My mouth shut right away when I was about to ask what was going on. The person that was blocking the carriage seemed familiar. A white outfit with a red plum symbol. And the sword on his hips that had the symbol of plum blossom. There was only one place where martial artists wore such clothing. The place which the heavenly demon and I destroyed. I apologize for suddenly stopping you, but I came here as I was curious about something. The young man spoke gently. The voice fit his soft appearance. It was a familiar appearance as well as a familiar voice. It belonged to none other than the person I finished off by snapping his neck. The last survivor of Mount Hua. I am young Peng of Mount Hua. He was the Plum Blossoming Sword Emperor. No, he was currently called the Plum Blossoming Sword Dragon. Is it really okay for you to do such a dangerous thing, as a martial artist of Mount Hua? Nguyen complained to young Peng. It didn't seem like he came out of nowhere to stop us. I was supposed to be talking to young Peng right now as I was the leader of the crew, but since I was still confused about what was going on, Nguyen had to step in. Upon hearing Nguyen's words, young Peng apologizes. I apologize. I did not want to block the road with such a method, but I had to do it as I had to check something. Check what? I wanted to check if that carriage had Mount Hua within it. The direction young Peng pointed to was the carriage I was in. What does he mean? Mount Hua within the carriage. Everyone seemed to be confused at the random words young Peng put out. I came to check since I felt a familiar feeling from far away, but it seems like there isn't anything problematic here after all. He really seemed to be relieved, as he let out a sigh of relief. Although, I am still curious about one more thing. If that carriage does not have Mount Hua within it. Along with young Peng's words, I noticed a familiar scent. It was the scent of plum blossom I had to deal with for the past many days. The scent was very close. It was because young Peng came right in front of me in an instant even though he was far away just a second ago. Young master. Young Peng's voice was tender, but also serious. With his voice, I was also able to hear the voice I heard from the destruction of Mount Hua along with it. For what reason? Why are you doing this to us? How come I can feel Mount Hua within you? To young Peng's question, my heart skipped a beat. Then I thought to myself. Sigh, it really seems like I'm screwed. Screwed. Ha. Chapter 52. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 2. Young Master. Young Peng called me again. However, I wasn't really in the situation to respond to him at the moment. What was that just now? Did I hear that correctly? I must be hallucinating. It had to be that. If it wasn't, I would like to kill myself by biting my tongue right now, right here. I must be hallucinating because it hasn't been long since I woke up, right? Yes, I must have been still half dreaming since I didn't fully wake up. After organizing my thoughts, I recalled the fact that I had to respond to young Peng's question quickly. It's nothing. Whoa, hey. You can hear me, kid. Oh, for fuck's sake. I cried out loud after getting surprised by the sudden voice I heard for the second time. And because of that, young Peng who was right in front of me also seemed to be surprised as confusion flickered across his eyes. I didn't even bother looking at young Peng's reaction and quickly hid behind him. Young Peng exclaimed in astonishment. Why, young master? What are you doing? Did you not just hear that? Hear what? That you just curse it out loud just now. No. Not that. A voice of an old man that sounds like he would be the annoying type. What are you saying right now, you little brat? Who are you calling annoying? See. You really can't hear anything. I asked young Peng again, but he only looked at me like he was looking at a lunatic. It was understandable since I suddenly hid behind him while he was just trying to ask me a question. But for fuck's sake, he really can't hear it. How can he not hear such a loud voice? Telepathic voice. No, it was different. It was as if the voice was echoing inside my brain. You little brat, how can I hear such insults from a kid that would piss his pants if I just stared at him for a moment when I was alive? When I was alive. So it really is a ghost. Shut it, kid. What are you getting scared for such small thing as this when you have a wiener? When did this thing catch on? I never went through any kind of graveyard or haunted places, so why is this happening all of a sudden? When did it catch on my ass? You are the one who is responsible for this. Upon hearing the evil spirit's words, evil spirit. Evil spiriite. Upon hearing the ghost's words, I stopped my thoughts. What does you mean I am responsible for this? You were the one who secretly devoured that thing up and now you're acting like you did nothing wrong. Don't you have an ounce of shame at all? Ha! What do you mean by me eating that thing up? Why, young master? I ignored young Peng who looked at me with fear. Compared to him I was in a much more hurry, so I wasn't in a situation to care about my appearance. To my words, the ghost spoke back as my words seemed absurd to him. You little brat, you really didn't know. After sucking all of that until you were completely full. What was he on about? What did I eat? You can't even remember. How absurd. You really don't know the reason why you were able to break that wall. Wall. Upon hearing the ghost's words, I got reminded of one thing that happened earlier. The day when my flame art reached the fourth realm. And the thick plum scent I smelled the night before. And the fact that the light that came from the treasure got dimmer the next day. The thought gave me goosebumps. It surely can't be that, right? Haha. Thank God that you're not completely dumb. Oh Lord save me, how dare you treat me as an evil spirit when you were only able to break that wall thanks to me. You really are a spoiled little brat. I did not know that the treasure of Mount Hua was capable of something like this. I mean, who treats an object that's possessed by a ghost a treasure? What kind of treasure is this? This is just an object possessed by a spirit. You are still running that mouth even after all that. You impress me in different ways. Who are you? Is a ghost really possessing this treasure, ghost? Don't compare someone like me to something like a ghost. My chest tingles along with the ghost's words. Was it heat? However, it was too cool and calm for it to be heat. My chi was moving by itself without my control. It was a really disgusting feeling to have when the chi moved around my body regardless of my will. It felt like hundreds of insects were climbing my body. I feel like I'm going to vomit. The feeling was calm, but it still was painful as it covered my whole body. I clenched my teeth and tried to withstand it, but that also wasn't easy. And even during this, the ghost didn't stop talking that I am the 8th generation Lord of Mount Hua. My chest did not stop tingling while the ghost continued to talk. The disgusting feeling was now entering my abdomen area as well. Young Peng tried to give me a helping hand while being confused, but my consciousness continued to fade, and had no intention of coming back. My sights were slowly becoming white. At the end, that I am the divine sword of Mount Hua, Shincheol. I lost my consciousness after last hearing the ghost's words. Asterisk 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 the Blood Demon War. This was the war brought by the blood demons many centuries ago. Before the heavenly demon made its appearance to the world, the Blood Demon War was considered to be the biggest disaster in history. But even then, there weren't many tales to be told when it came to the Blood Demon War. Many just said that it was a violent and cruel thing that happened, and that the Blood Demon who was about to turn the world into a sea of blood was stopped by the heroes of the world, and that was all to it. Whether it was me not really caring about the history, or there wasn't much history of it in the first place, or that particular tale was intentionally not shared at all was something I didn't know, but I knew that there was only a little bit of information when it came to the Blood Demon. The Iron Fist, Yun Il. Cheon. The Light of Might, Kialiang. The Divine Sword of Mount Hua, Shincheol. The Thunderous Sword, Namgung Myung. The Heavenly Poison, Tang Jae-moon. No matter how much time passed, the 5 masters that stopped the Blood Demon disaster would have all their names be remembered in the history of the world. During the process, Yun Il. Cheol perished, and the greatest clan of that age, Golden Nature Clan, disappeared without leaving any trace. And Tang Jae-moon of Tang Clan also died in that war, which greatly shook the Tang Clan. But in the end, the heroes of the world were able to stop the blood disaster, and were successful in killing the Blood Demon, so it was overall a success. It was thanks to them that the world we live in continued to exist. It was something I heard so many times that my ears would start to bleed. And in the future, when the Heavenly Demon threatened the world, it was stopped by Seol along with other heroes of the world, so I'd assume it would be similar to that. That was what made it even harder for me to believe. I clenched my head that was aching in pain and asked. Who are you again? That I said, I'm Shincheol, you little brat. So, you're saying you are the Divine Sword of Mount Hua. Do you know how many times you asked the same question? Yeah, probably more than 10 times by now. After returning to my sense, I was in the carriage rather than outside. I hoped that the voice I kept hearing was just a dream, but I heard the annoying voice as soon as I woke up, which crushed my hope. Annoying. You little brat. You are still as rude as before. It was a voice of an old man that sounded annoying and harsh. And you are telling me that this was the Divine Sword of Mount Hua? There was no way someone wouldn't know the title, Sword of Mount Hua, if they belonged to a martial artist clan. If one had to pick the most respected name of Mount Hua, the very first name that would be mentioned would be the Sword of Mount Hua, if excluding the current generation's leader of Mount Hua. It was said that his kindness and dignity was spread to not only Mount Hua, but to the world as well. Kids nowadays. TSK. Back in my days, if a senior said something, the little ones would have to believe them without saying a word. It was said that the man who earned the title of Divine Sword of Mount Hua would make a dried dead tree blossom with plums if he passed by it. Furthermore, it's an elderly man talking, so you should treat me with respect, rather than being scared. And you're telling me to believe that he is the Divine Sword of Mount Hua? Kindness my ass, I can feel that he has a nasty heart. And dignity. It would be more believable if he said that he was an evil spirit. That was what I felt he was. Yeah, it definitely is an evil spirit. I had to have been possessed by an evil spirit while letting my guard down. Shit, should I really go through exorcism? You rotting shit. How dare you treat me in this way? I clenched my head again that began aching again. How am I able to find any sign of Mount Hua in that nasty way of talking of his? There was no way I could believe that he was who he was claiming he was. Like, why would a hero of Mount Hua become an evil spirit for whatever reason? There was no way I'd believe that. You ate all of that thing up before with joy, and now you are contradicting yourself. What do you mean by me eating something up? You keep acting like you don't know a damn thing. I am more curious, child. How come you were able to absorb the chi of Mount Hua when you aren't even from the clan in the first place? I couldn't say a word upon hearing the evil spirit's question. It would honestly be weird that I couldn't remember what happened before. The voice I heard and the scent of plum blossoms I was able to smell during that night was not a dream, but a reality for sure. This would mean that the fact I reached the 4th realm of flame arts would be because of ability, demonic absorption coming into play to absorb the energy from the treasure. What happened, that made me wonder even more, that if this all happened because of my demonic absorption, that would mean that I absorbed the chi without my will to do so by not even touching it with my hand, but rather the treasure just being in my pocket. I thought it was an ability that was only able to absorb the chi from demonic stones but now treasures as well. And I didn't even touch it with my hand and it acted on its own. I'm in deep trouble. I wasn't sure before since the appearance of the treasure didn't change much, but now that I realized what was happening, I felt like there was no hole left for me to escape through. That I swear that your body is already preoccupied with another form of chi, so how can this be? Before that, if you really are the divine sword of Mount Hua, then how come you are talking to me right now? Like I said before, it's because you little shit absorbed the stone's chi. So you were stuck in the treasure for all this time. It said that it's been hundreds of years ever since this stone came to exist, so he was stuck in there for this long. Is that really possible? Not quite. It hasn't been long since I've opened my eyes. It hasn't been long, you say? What the heck does this mean? Yes, when you brat first picked up the treasure, it was at that moment, when I regained my consciousness. When the second elder gave me the treasure. That really makes no sense. If that really was true, then how? Maybe this was a side effect that gave me hallucinations because I absorbed too much chi from the treasure. I even had thoughts like these. And whether if this truly was the divine sword of Mount Hua, or it was a lowly ghost that was trying to trick me into believing that he was the hero of Mount Hua, whichever it was, it didn't change that all of this was a hassle for me. How funny, I helped you just in case you lose your life because you overdid yourself trying to break that wall, and yet I'm still getting treated as an evil spirit. The ghost spoke. Noel, he was probably correct. I couldn't break the wall because of my body not being able to handle the harsh chi, but thanks to absorbing the chi from the treasure, I was smoothly able to break the wall with ease. The problem was, I was avoiding that issue, but after hearing the divine sword's words, I was certain in something. The chi that got meshed into my body. And the scent of plums that would linger around me no matter how much I tried to hide it. And the fact that I was able to reach a certain level in the martial arts of the Mount Hua sect with ease when it took their martial artists endless training to reach that point. What do I do? Something like, hee. I accidentally absorbed the chi from the treasure. Sorry, wouldn't cut it. It was already problematic that I now had possession of Mount Hua's chi when I wasn't even accepted by the Mount Hua sect, but it was more problematic that I didn't even know how to explain why I even possessed such chi in the first place. The ghost laughed while I was conflicted in my thoughts. Your fault for devouring all of that up. You think I wanted to do that, you devoured all that chi like a ravenous wild beast that night, yet now, you are trying to contradict your very own actions. That's true. How much did I consume for it to be this noticeable? It made it more annoying since this wasn't my intention in the first place. This shitty demonic ability. It's ruining this life as well when I'm trying to live a normal life. I ignored my irritation and asked. Let me ask something. Why were you even in there in the first place? If it was really the divine sword of Mount Hua, the reason why he was in the treasure, and if it wasn't really him, then who this really was, I had to know it all. Upon hearing my question, the ghost became silent for a moment. Was it difficult for him to answer, or was he trying to be careful with his answer since it was important? After a while, the ghost started to speak. Unlike before, the voice was quieter. I don't know myself. Why was I even there? Upon hearing the ghost's words, I heaved a deep sigh and opened the door of the carriage. He basically didn't know a thing either. Or it could be that he knew but was pretending to not know. Which would mean that he didn't want to tell me. In other words, either option weren't helpful to me at all. The divine sword of Mount Hua, my ass, this is definitely just some evil spirit. I'm just gonna go outside rather than continuing this pointless conversation. I had to check what was going on outside since I missed some stuff while I was unconscious, you little brat. I told you it's not. Not what? Oh. Young master. Because of the enthusiastic voice, both me and the ghost stopped talking. It was young Peng who was calling for me. But something was weird. The appearance of young Peng was now much poorer than the neat appearance he had before. He was tied up firmly with ropes while he had his knees on the floor, and was getting threatened by the Muyin sword. And behind him was Mount Hua. Martial artists that wore the same white uniform as young Peng were standing against the people from my crew. No matter how I looked at it, it wasn't a nice confrontation they were having, so I looked at young Peng. Young Peng smiled brightly while looking at me. Haha. Young master. Anyway, now you can lend me a helping hand. What? His voice was way too enthusiastic, which didn't fit the situation he was in, so I was confused. Why is this guy acting like that? It seems like something had transpired again. Chapter 53. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 3. Are you feeling alright now? Young Peng had been the one to ask me that question, and it was odd. Shouldn't I ask that question? He looked happy, which was quite the contrast to the current situation where he was being treated like a criminal. For some reason, I felt like, at the moment, young Peng sort of resembled Peng Wujin. I can smell the lunatic in him. It definitely wasn't a pleasant feeling. Regardless, I had to find out why he was in that situation, so I moved closer to him. What happened for such a beautiful outfit to get covered in dirt? I ignored the supposed divine sword of Mount Hua's words. So, why are you in this situation? Haha, Something happened. Young master. Muyin, who was shocked to see me, quickly ran towards me. Are you alright? Yeah, I am. I was just a little dizzy earlier. I looked at the people from Mount Hua who continued to stare at us while standing opposite us. Who are these guys? They were adorned in white outfit, and some of them had the same plum symbol on their uniforms that young Peng had. They were the Plum Blossom Swordsmen of Mount Hua. They were the talented people that had been able to blossom after their endless training. And they were at the very least first-rate martial artists, if not higher. What's going on? Upon hearing my question, Muyin retrieved his sword and came to me to answer. You fainted while talking to that man, so we captured him before things got ugly. Captured him? That guy. Their actions were understandable since I had indeed fainted whilst talking to him. But it was surprising that young Peng had been so easily captured. Didn't he want to ask me something? Judging from his face, I am assuming he let himself get captured without a fight. Young Peng smiled as he seemed to understand what I was thinking. I felt like after you woke up, everything would be resolved nicely, so there was no point in me fighting back. Even though you forcefully stopped our carriages before. Young Peng laughed awkwardly at my response. That. I do apologize for that. We also had our reasons. We. Young Peng and his people, along with the Plum Blossom Swordsmen of Mount Hua. The title, Plum Blossom Swordsman, was famous throughout the world, but there were only a small number of people who held that title. This was because no clan in the world had an overflowing number of martial artists that were first-rate or above. But for them to be all moving together as a group meant that this was not a normal problem. Do they also have a reason on stopping us here? Young Peng smiled bitterly at my question. I turned to Muyin, asking that he release young Peng as we didn't have any issues with him, and then moved towards his people. As I moved, however, something came to mind that caused me to slow down my steps. Wait, wouldn't they notice the chi if I go closer to them? Now that I thought about it, the chi that was inside my body could be problematic. If young Peng had been able to notice it, wouldn't other highly trained Plum Blossom swordsmen be able to do the same? The ghost spoke to me at this point, calming my nervousness. Do not worry and just go. You can even read my mind. That was a bit annoying, just barely. I was able to hear it even clearer because you were so nervous about it. Anyway, just go, I have a solution. I didn't want to believe it, but it was too late anyways, so I decided to believe him. Now that I think about it, I also have a question for you as well. What is it that I'll ask it later? Aren't you in more of a hurry than I am? I arrived in front of the man who seemed like he was the leader of this crew. The fact that Mount Hua still exists in the world is enough. I am Gu Yangchen from the Gu clan. I am a student of the second generation of Mount Hua, Xinhyun. I see, Lord Xinhyun, may I ask what is going on right now? Xinhyun had a troubled look on his face as he turned his gaze to Young Peng. It seemed like there was a problem on this side as well. Young Peng ran towards us after getting released, chuckling nervously upon reaching us whilst scratching the back of his head. Hee hee. Pow. Ow wow. His chuckle was cut short when Xinhyun suddenly bonked his head. I was expecting a bonk sound, but pow. Young Peng, meanwhile, had started to roll on the floor whilst screaming after a sound that shouldn't have come from a human's head after he received bonking. Oh, that hurt so much, master, that hurt. I'm more hurt. It's because you beat up your lovely disciple, right? You want another bonking? Sorry. Xinhyun let out a sigh as if the light of the world was just turned off. You know it hasn't even been a month since I told you not to cause any trouble, right? Yes. So you remember. Then how come you still acted this way by yourself? I apologize. But we have to think about the situation. Yes, we do, but in reality, it is our situation and ours alone. Do you think outsiders will understand that? Young Peng stopped talking after hearing Xinhyun's words. But Xinhyun continued to talk with no intention of stopping. You are a Taoist before you are a martial artist. Everyone knows your talent, but that is why you were told to not be arrogant. Yes, those words came from none other than the Lord himself. You have to realize that although you are being called the Sword Dragon, that doesn't mean that everyone in the world is on your side. I apologize. All right. Xinhyun turned away from the sad young Peng, then approached us and bowed his head. Our disciple has caused you a lot of trouble. I can't exactly say much after you delivered such a thorough scolding. He probably did it on purpose so that I couldn't complain afterwards. Is it a mindset of, I'd rather beat him up myself? Not bad. What? What's not bad? I let out a sigh at the awkward situation unfolding before me and spoke to Xinhyun. If you are done, I would like you to explain this to me as well. I felt like something was going to happen, but I had to find out what it was. They had stopped our carriage so abruptly, so it was only fair that they told us what exactly was going on. Xinhyun seemed to be stunned momentarily upon hearing my statement, but then spoke shortly after organizing his thoughts. Recently, the people of Mount Hua have been disappearing randomly. The people of Mount Hua. Yes, more specifically, the swordsmen of Mount Hua that act outside of the clan. Swordsmen of Mount Hua huh? Such people are disappearing. It was common for swordsmen to lose their lives while defending against the gate of demons, but for Mount Hua to send their own swordsmen to fight against the demons meant that it was a major problem. They had even gone as far as to send some of their plum blossom swordsmen as well. We were in the process of scouting for danger as the situation is bad. Even though Mount Hua is a bit far from here. We still had to go a long way to reach Mount Hua. Yet the people of Mount Hua are searching all the way here. Xinhyun released a bitter smile at my comment. I can't tell the outsiders the reason. If so, then that's fine. Something had happened, but I didn't think I needed to dig into it any further. It probably wasn't anything too serious considering I didn't hear about it in my past life. Anyway, while we were finishing our job here, our student said that he felt something and suddenly ran off, which caused all this. He'd felt the chi of Mount Hua in some random unknown carriage, so he first stopped us without thinking about the consequences. I understood that he was desperate considering their situation, but his actions without considering the consequences deserved to be admonished. I asked Xinhyun. What is your opinion on this? Xinhyun carefully responded to my question. Now that I am this close, it certainly wasn't a mistake. I can definitely feel it. Xinhyun pointed to the carriage I was riding as he spoke. I would like to search for it, as long as you give me permission. You feel it from that carriage over there? Yes. Young Peng said that he had felt something within me as well. You don't feel that? Something from you. Xinhyun thoroughly scrutinized me after hearing my question. I felt his chi searching around my body, but I didn't fight back as it was harmless. Xinhyun looked towards Young Peng. It seemed like he didn't feel anything. Young Peng, what did you feel within him? Young Peng looked towards me and frowns. Why can't I feel it? I could have sworn I felt it early. Don't make excuses. Young Peng flinched upon hearing Xinhyun's words. Then he muttered. I apologize, it seems like I made a mistake. You shouldn't be apologizing to me. Young Peng, after hearing Xinhyun's words, stood up and bowed his head. I apologize, young master, I behaved quite rudely. It's fine. As I said that, I wondered why he couldn't feel the chi now when it had previously been so blatantly noticeable. The ghost answered my question that I told you earlier, I have a solution. Those indeed were his words. I didn't know what he did to solve this, but the chi that had been lingering around me was now hiding itself within my body. It was a relief that the problem I had been most nervous about was solved so smoothly. I spoke to Xinhyun after letting out a sigh of relief. There is no need for you to search the carriage. What do you mean? I already know about the chi you felt. Please wait here. Nguyen, who already knew what I was thinking, swiftly brought the box from the carriage to me. On receiving it, I opened the box and showed him the treasure within it. This is. Young Peng was the fastest to react, followed by Xinhyun. It was a little late, but the other members of Mount Hua that stood behind also showed the same reaction. The Great Plum Blossom Stone. After unwrapping the cloth, the scent of plum spread, and the stone shining in pinkish light was revealed. Xinhyun was visibly dumbfounded and asked. Why is it that this stone is in your possession? He didn't even seem to consider that it could be fake, which was understandable since there was no way that anyone could be skilled enough to replicate this stone perfectly. It wasn't called a treasure for nothing. I was on my way to return the stone to Mount Hua, as our clan was tasked to take care of this stone for a brief time. From your clan? How could I explain this? I couldn't just say that we won the treasure due to our elders' drinking bet. Young Peng interrupted our conversation. So this is what our lord lost in the drinking bet. Shut your mouth. Yes, master. Oh, so these guys knew the full story. That made it easier for me as I wouldn't have to explain things. Xinhyun's ears had turned a bright red from embarrassment. It was understandable, since this was caused by the man who represents the head of Mount Hua. Although the same goes for us. I wondered what kind of meeting the second elder could have attended for such a thing to happen. I was curious, but I didn't want to pry. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons why we were on our way to Mount Hua. I see. We both seemed to have a lot on our minds, but it wasn't what we could say out loud. We would only be embarrassing ourselves further if we continued to speak more. Xinhyun let out some fake coughs. It was probably to break the awkwardness of the situation. Anyway. If that's why you came here, since we were done searching here, you can let us take the treasure. That I cannot do. Xinhyun's eyes widened at my quick response. As much as I wanted to just leave after giving him the treasure, this was only one of the reasons why I came here. My main goal here was to retrieve my little sibling. Plus, I was tasked to hand the treasure back to the lord of the clan myself, so even if you are from Mount Hua, I don't think I can easily give this to you. Xinhyun groaned at my response. Whether it was because he didn't expect such a response or that he had a lot of thoughts, was something I did not know. However, he quickly organized his thoughts and responded. I understand. However, since we all saw the treasure already and can't move away from it easily, please allow us to travel along with your clan. Basically, he was saying if you won't give it, then we will follow you. I nodded at Shin Hyun. It was understandable as we were talking about the treasure of their clan. I'm satisfied enough by the fact that I got away with absorbing some chi from the treasure. If I was caught with that, I couldn't even imagine what kind of trouble I'd be in. I knew this was going to happen ever since you started to devour all of that like a pig. What would you have done without me, TSK? Those were the first things he said after remaining quiet for so long. I really hoped that he would just stay quiet, but it seemed like he had no intention of doing so. Mount Hua. The kids from the clan are so strong, so I would assume the grown-ups are no different. It sounded like he was emotional. It felt a little frustrating to hear him talk while I had to go through all the actual headache. Can I ask you something? The person that interrupted our conversation was Young Peng, who was quietly sitting next to me. Shin Hyun stared at Young Peng, who had interrupted my trail of thought, but Young Peng ignored his master's gaze. Then Shin Hyun's eyes heated up. You little. No, I really have something important to ask. So I asked Young Peng. What is it that you want? You said you came from the Gu clan, right? Yes. You are saying the Gu clan from Shaanxi, right? Yes. Young Peng's expression slowly turned strange at my response. Why does he keep asking about my clan anyways? Master. What? Shin Hyun's voice was nervous as if he knew that Young Peng was about to cause trouble again. But after hearing the words that followed, Shin Hyun's expression morphed to resemble Young Peng's. Isn't the Gu clan of Shaanxi the clan senior belongs to? Following Young Peng's words, Shin Hyun along with all the other people of Mount Hua turned to stare at me. Their gazes were much more intense than when they had looked at the treasure. Why were they acting like that? Chapter 54. The Plum Blossom Dragon. 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Plum Blossom Dragon. 4. I could feel their intense stares. I didn't know why, but the people of Mount Hua had suddenly begun staring at me intensely. Why are they suddenly acting like this? I slowly scratched my cheek, and Shin Hyun and Young Peng, who were next to me, flinched visibly at my movement. Ha! Why are you all scared? I couldn't understand what was going on. Ahem. Shin Hyun let out a fake cough on noticing the weird gaze I was giving him. Why are you all suddenly acting like this? No, it's how can I say this? Ha! What was that reaction? At this point I realized that the people of Mount Hua who had been previously staring intensely at me could suddenly no longer look at me. Instead they began whispering amongst themselves. I knew he looked familiar. But his eyes aren't too similar. That's why it's hard to make eye contact with him. I could hear all of their murmurs. It was obvious that they were speaking about me, but why all of a sudden? What are you all talking about? I finally asked after holding it in for a while. It didn't feel too nice to see them whispering about me while standing right in front of me. Shin Hyun responded to the question I'd asked with an audibly irritated tone. Everyone is just surprised that you are from the Gu clan. He was suddenly talking to me more formally. What did me being a descendant of the Gu clan have to do with any of this? Your little sister is rather famous amongst our people, my little sister. I carefully mulled over Shin Hyun's response. If I was to be honest, I didn't really know much about my little sister. I just knew that ever since young, she had been away from the clan and had spent her life in Mount Hua. So unlike my two older sisters that were in the clan, I didn't really have the chance to interact much with my little sister. Now that I thought about it, it was a strange thing for a descendant of a noble clan to be accepted into a Taoist clan as one of them. But back then, I hadn't really thought much of it. Of course, in the later days, it was impossible not to know since my little sister gained so much fame. One thing that I did know about her, however, was that every once in a few years my little sister would come back to the clan for a few days. Besides that, I didn't really have much information on her during this time. What about her? I asked Xinhyun because I couldn't figure it out no matter how much I thought about it. Ahem. Xinhyun kept opening and closing his mouth as though he couldn't answer easily. What's the big fuss about for him to hesitate that much? Sir, I would really like to ask you something. Young Peng interrupted the conversation while Xinhyun was struggling to speak. What is it? Young master, was Senior always like that? Senior. The Xinhyun before me was a disciple of the second generation of Mount Hua, and since he was called master by Young Peng, it meant that Young Peng was a disciple of the third generation of the clan. Let alone me, my little sister was around 2 years younger than Young Peng, so I expected them to be in the same generation. So, why were they referring to her as senior? What do you mean by that? After struggling for a while, Young Peng shut his eyes tightly and spat out his question. Was Senior Gu once a boy? I couldn't hear all of Young Peng's words, because Xinhyun immediately slapped Young Peng's lips with his hands. Uff. Young Peng rolled backwards while holding his lips that got slapped, and was sent even further away after being kicked by Xinhyun. Then in the back, the people from Mount Hua started to kick and beat up Young Peng as if they had been waiting for it. Young Peng's screams rang out as kicks rained on him. Oh, ow, master, please wait. Is this guy crazy? He was really about to say that out loud. Hey! Who is the direct master of this kid? Who is responsible for this third-generation student? Who taught him this way? It's you, you idiot. Ow wow. The situation before me rendered me speechless. Young Peng who was getting beaten up to the point where dust spread everywhere. I could have sworn that he had been trying to ask me about some boy. I tried to ask Xinhyun, but Xinhyun strictly refused. You do not need to worry about this. I feel like I do have to. No, you really don't need to. We felt that he needed more teaching anyway, and this is a good time. Ha! Teaching. That was teaching. Could they really treat the one being called the Sword Dragon like that? His appearance was completely polar opposite of what I was expecting. I had expected that he would be the calm and mature type, but what in the world, as expected, they taught him well. It is important for teachers to make bonds with their students like that. Oh, right. If this old man had really been the divine sword, then I could guess from where it all started to go wrong. I felt like I could understand the situation better with that way of thinking. After the people of Mount Hua were done with their beating, they stepped away from him, leaving Young Peng who was lying on the floor as if he was dead. It looked like he'd lost consciousness. Was he really all right? Someone then lifted Young Peng onto his shoulders and disappeared to the back. Don't worry about it. He'll wake up soon. Before I could ask anything, Xinhyun initiated the conversation. I felt like I could no longer ask anything. Yeah, anyways, so you are on your way to Mount Hua then. That's the plan. I do have a task to complete after all. You have more things to do in Mount Hua besides from returning the treasure. It's nothing big, I just have to bring back my little sister to our clan. Pardon. Did I say something weird again? Just like before, the people of Mount Hua began staring at me once again. No, it wasn't like before. Their stares were more intense now than earlier. Was Mount Hua always known for having these lunatics? What did you just say? Geez, please be a little quiet. My head is aching, you little brat, you talk shit about other people's clans since you got nothing better to do. No matter what he said, my opinion didn't change. I felt that, considering the situation before me, it was completely fair for me to call them as such. Xinhyun suddenly and firmly grabbed my shoulders. What are you doing? Let us go, young master. Pardon. He was now being even more formal to me. The people of Mount Hua that were behind Xinhyun also gathered up in front of me. We shall guide you to Mount Hua with utmost safety. You must be tired from all the walking, right? Do you want me to carry you there? I am pretty fast. Shall I fan you? Hey! Get rid of that horse, I can run faster than that horse. 2 horses are better than 1, I'll also become a horse. Whoa! What should I do? These guys really are crazy. I responded while also forcing a smile onto my face. Thankfully, my voice didn't quiver. No, I think it's better for us to travel separately. That was my plea, but my words were completely ignored and we ended up traveling along with the people of Mount Hua. All these cheerful appearances are quite wholesome. Life. Mount Hua was located near Huayin city of Shaanxi province. The season whence plums bloomed had already passed, but in Mount Hua, plums bloomed through all 4 seasons. The constant bloom was caused and maintained by the chi of martial artists of Mount Hua. We were currently in the middle of a flaming summer, but at Mount Hua it looked like it was winter due to the flowers falling down like snowflakes. After walking through the mountain path, there was a small hut after reaching the closest point to the peak. Forget the 3rd generation, even the 2nd generation disciples weren't allowed to enter here. Only the Lord and the elders of the clan and a select few of the 1st generation disciples could enter. But a small girl carefully opened the door of the hut after climbing the mountain. Creak. She opened it as carefully as possible, but the old door refused to follow her intentions. Because of that, the person that was inside was woken up from his slumber. She then said, "Come in." Her voice gave away her old age, but even then, a certain elegance and softness remained in her voice. The small girl carefully appeared before while looking guilty. Then the woman asked, "Ryunghwa, why are you making such a face?" "I'm sorry, I just wanted to see your face but I woke you up." The master smiled back upon hearing her disciple's words. No matter how many years had passed, her disciple remained as adorable as ever, so she had no other choice but to return her feelings. She carefully opened her arms. The disciple then ran towards her master and hugged her. The master spoke to her disciple while patting her head. "How come you keep coming here every day even though it is scary at night? You make me feel bad. It's because I want to." "Don't feel that way." To arrive here, the disciple had to go through rough mountain roads and run for a long time. It was a painful and tiring ordeal for a small kid to do. But the disciple came to see her master every day regardless. The disciple asked carefully while being in her master's embrace. "Are you feeling all right?" "I am feeling fine since today's weather is good." "Really? Do you want to go on a walk with me?" "Yeah." The disciple smiled brightly as if she'd been waiting for this and then grabbed her master's hand. It was a cold, wrinkled hand, but the disciple was satisfied with it. They got out of the hut and went for a walk together. It wasn't completely dark thanks to the moon that shined brightly at night, and the plum blossoms became even more beautiful when the moonlight shone upon them. Walking through the mountain filled with plum blossoms alongside her master was something that the disciple loved. The hand that she held was cold, but she was definitely able to feel the warmth in it. The disciple took this as a sign of love. She walked at the same pace as her master so that she wouldn't fall behind. She kicked away the stones that could trip her as well. Dust slowly gathered on her pretty clothes, but she didn't care. The master calmly patted her disciple's head. "Ryunghwa." "Yes, master." The master was hesitant to speak. She had something to say, but it was something that her disciple disliked. "It's around that time when you return to Shaanxi for a little." As expected, the disciple became quiet after hearing her teacher's words. The master noticed the slight frown on her face. The master lightly smiled upon seeing that appearance. "You are going there to see your family, do you hate it that much?" "Ryunghwa." "Family." The disciple whispered quietly. The master moved her ears closer to her. She was then able to hear her disciple's voice a little more clearly. "They are not my family." She sounded like she was about to cry. The master slowly lifted her head and hugged her student. "I'm sorry." The master couldn't do anything but apologize. It was not her business to talk about such a topic. She was a disciple she had been asked to teach her, but she had no regrets. Because she realized not long after, that the happiness she got was from none other than her disciple. The only disappointment was that her body wasn't in its healthiest state. If they had met a bit earlier, she would have taught her more things and hugged her more frequently. She felt a heavy grudge against time because of that. The master wanted her disciple to only find happiness in this forsaken world. Under the moonlight that shone on Mount Hua, the plum blossom sword patted her student's head bitterly. Rohar. The birds that hid in the forest quickly fled following the roar of a bear. The area was filled with the corpses of demons. In a puddle of blue demon blood, Namgung Bai-Da calmly withdrew her chi. How many times had she come across demons? She counted up until her fingers' limits, but she couldn't remember any more after that. She had run restlessly from Shangxi, but after running for a long time, she started feeling doubts about what she was trying to do. But she didn't want to go back home, as she'd found a place that was more comforting than home. Namgung Bai-Da was someone who found her way with her senses. To be precise, she moved in the direction where the stench was least present. But because of that, she would often get lost. And now, she was already running out of chi. A sudden rain had drenched her, alongside the equally sudden appearance of demons in her path, and because she kept running through the mountain roads, her neat clothes had now turned dirty and ragged. However, she was familiar with all of those things. And thankfully, she had come across a lake, so it wasn't all bad. Just a little more. Namgung Bai-Da whispered to herself in the forest where only trees and grass were visible. She was determined to follow through with her quest. If you asked how she was so sure about her whisper, not even she would be able to answer. She just felt that way. That if she went this way, he would be there. The only cozy and warm place that existed in this forsaken world. She cleaned her sword and started to move again. It was definitely this way. She just felt that this way was the right direction for some reason. I want to see him alr. Namgung Bai-Da's eyes widened and she covered her mouth after speaking without thinking. I want to see him. Why? Is it because he doesn't smell? Is that why? She started to slow down her steps and eventually came to a halt. She then began organizing her thoughts. She stood still for a long time. After thinking for a while, she finally spoke. I want to see him. I want to see him. Namgung Bai-Da nodded her head. She didn't know why, but she felt that she wanted to see him. And that much was enough. There was no need to think about it further. Only a little more. She could feel him from far away. It was an uncertain certainty. She still felt like she had some ways to go, but it wouldn't take that long. Namgung Bai-Da, after finishing organizing her thoughts, started to move again. Chapter 55. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Plum Blossom Dragon, 5. This was the first night since we started traveling together with the crew from Mount Hua. It had certainly been an unexpected accompaniment, but, thankfully, traveling with them hadn't really affected things for us as they took care of their own food and lodgings. Then again, traveling with us probably did them more harm than good because they had to match our pace. That was the price they have to pay in order to keep the treasure safe. Their behavior was understandable when one considered the priceless treasure we had in our possession. Clans without their own wouldn't know, but the clans in the 10-sect alliance as well as the 4 noble clans probably had at least one treasure of their own. And these treasures pretty much served as the symbols of their clans. And to lose such significant treasure in a drinking bet is just. Even the old ghost had chosen to remain silent in the face of this situation when in other situations he would always choose to nag me whenever I talked badly about Mount Hua. Ahem. Betting such an item is one thing, actually accepting the item is another. Why would he actually accept such an item being offered in a bet? Honestly, I could imagine the second elder happily accepting the offer with a wide grin on his face. Because of him, I even got this lowly ghost. How dare you call me a lowly ghost? Anyways, you said you had something you wanted to ask me. I'd used my training as an excuse to step away from the camp at night. I was even able to put up a weak sound barrier since my chi had increased. After I was done with my preparation, the ghost. Oh yeah, what should I call him? You may address me as Elder Divine Sword of Mount Hua. I'll call you Elder Shin for short. You really don't listen, huh? You could have at least called me Shinchiol, not Elder Shin. What kind of person calls someone like that? Then should I just call you Old Ghost? Just call me however you like. Elder Shin let out a sigh. Whether he was really a hero of the past or the divine sword didn't matter to me. I just need to know whether or not he will bring me trouble. That was what really mattered. I was really uncomfortable with having to deal with another mind in my head while I only had one body to work with, and I didn't want to have to worry about a scenario where he took over my body completely. If possible, I wanted to be completely free of it, but it seemed like it wasn't going to be that easy. Earlier, he was able to control my chi. This might be dangerous. How can I deal with this situation? This was such a hassle. While I was mulling over my thoughts, Elder Shin interjected that it seems like you have much to think about. Yes, it is problematic after all. If he was able to read my mind even slightly, then he probably knew what I was worrying about. There was no use in hiding it. What can I do so you can leave my body? You think I would stick with you if I knew a way? There are so many kids from Mount Hua here that I'd rather take over. Elder Shin continued to speak. Don't worry about such a pointless thing, I have no interest in your body. But it's not like I can just believe that. What will you do if you don't believe it then? You got any other solution? Maybe we can find one if we look for it. It's not that easy. You seem to be worrying about how I was able to control your chi, but hiding your chi was my limit, so don't worry about it. Then how did you make me faint? If Elder Shin was being honest, then what about the interaction I'd had with the sword dragon? It was a disgusting sensation, feeling my chi move around my body without my control. Elder Shin responded to my thoughts as he was dumbfounded by it. I didn't do that, you little brat. Ha. Whether you believe me or not is your choice, but, in the first place, it's weird that you expect everything to be fine while containing that thing. Contain. What do you mean by contain? Elder Shin responded as if he hadn't expected my question. So you don't even know what you're harboring within your own body. Can you at least explain first? I think I've answered enough, it's my turn. It's only right to have a fair trade. TSK. It seemed like he had no intention of letting me know what I was harboring within my own body. What an old man he was. There was no way that this guy was really the world-famous divine sword of Mount Hua. His personality especially was completely different from what everyone said he was like, and instead was a complete mess. I guess you don't want to hear it. I'm just joking with you. I think you have a very large and far-reaching mind which symbolizes the clan. For fuck's sake. Why is this guy so narrow-minded? I can read your mind, you know. Just ask what you wanted to ask already. The conversation was, in the end, largely pointless. We had to get to the point that I want to ask you something. Yes, ask away. Do you know what generation the current Lord of Mount Hua is from? The generation of the current Lord, the current Lord would be the Celestial Plum Blossom. He was one of the few sword wielders comparable to the Sword Emperor. Of course, to me, he was just a man that sold his clan's treasure after losing a drinking bet. Anyway, to answer what generation the Celestial Plum Blossom belonged to, I don't know. I mean, why would I be curious about the lord of some other clan, let alone what generation they are from? I'll ask the people from Mount Hua later. You little no, never mind. I'll ask you something else. Yes. Elder Shin took on a serious tone, much unlike before, as he spoke. What happened to the Blood King? Ha! The Blood King. I had to stop at Elder Shin's question. The Blood King. I had to think about what he meant when he asked that question. What do you mean? That I mean exactly what I asked. Do you not know the Blood King? Of course I know him. I've heard the story of the blood disaster to the point of my ears bleeding. Thankfully the story seems to have been passed down to the newer generation, but that's not what I'm asking about. I want to know about what happened to the Blood King at the end. Isn't it weirder that you don't know? You are the divine sword, after all. He was the hero that had stopped the Blood King and returned light to the world while also strengthening his clan even further. Yet he was asking about the Blood King that he himself defeated. Just answer my question. What happened to the Blood King? According to the history, the Blood King perished. It was none other than you guys that stopped him after all. You guys. I was referring to the 5 masters that fought in the Blood Demon War, which included the Divine Sword himself. After I listed the names of the masters, Elder Shin responded in relief. Thankfully, I am also included in that group. At this point, I'm more curious than you are. Why are you asking me this? Are you really the Divine Sword of Mount Hua? That I am indeed the Divine Sword, Shincheol. However, Elder Shin paused for a bit. The last battle I had with the Blood King is something I don't remember. What do you mean by that? He doesn't remember. I can tell that a long time has passed, judging by the title Shinhyun is being called. I can also tell that I was still alive after stopping the Blood King by reading your mind. Yes, but, after that. I can't remember anything else. So you don't even know why you were trapped inside the treasure. You think I'd be going through all this hassle with you if I knew why? At least you are not completely stupid. At least you know it's a hassle. I couldn't call him stupid, so I said it in a nicer way. According to Elder Shin's words, it seemed like he'd lost parts of his memory. Is this some side effect of him being trapped inside the treasure? Why do I always come across a problem whenever I do something? Is it karma? If it was karma, then I couldn't say much about it. It was my fault for living the way I did in my past life. I felt like someone was whispering those words in my ears that I don't remember. Anyways, isn't it all fine since the Blood King died and Mount Hua maintained their position? Your simple-minded way of thinking is the reason why you are lacking, but I envy that right now. Why are you talking shit like a smartass? So you knew. Now it's your turn to answer my question. About what? The thing I am containing. What do you mean by it? It was something I'd been concerned about the whole time. What is it that I am containing? The old man laughed as he found my nervousness entertaining. Why are you laughing? What would change if you hear it from me when you don't even believe me in the first place? But it's better to hear it first, right? What a shameless fellow you are. No point in hiding it since you can read my mind already. I was much more comfortable when I didn't have to act. Elder Shin spoke while I was making a tired face. That I do not know the thing that you are containing inside of you. What? He was talking as if he knew all about it earlier. He really is a fraud. Oh my, let me finish. Yes. That I'm honestly more astounded that you are not even able to feel it. What do you mean? You really don't feel anything when you have that reckless thing inside you. Reckless. Was he referring to the destructive flame arts? I had no problem with him calling that, as it indeed was a chi with a very violent flow, but it sounded more like Elder Shin was describing a beast rather than martial arts. That it wasn't happy with me entering your body and it tried to act recklessly on its own, so I put it to sleep. Be grateful, you little shit. Put it to sleep. Even now, if I let go of the leash, it will act recklessly. Do you want me to test it? As soon as Elder Shin finished talking, I felt the same disgusting sensation I'd felt earlier. The sensation that felt like chi with spikes was moving around my body while stabbing every part of it. Uff. I couldn't even breathe while my knees fell to the ground. Just when I was about to lose my consciousness, you see now. The pain disappeared along with Elder Shin's words. And I was finally able to breathe again. Huff, huff. What is this? My heart was beating much faster than before because of the sudden pain that it seems like the chi you absorbed from the treasure has woken up the beast you had inside. That's why I told you not to overeat. I told you, I didn't do it on purpose, even if my body wasn't used to the pain, the fact that it was able to make me faint in just a few seconds, this was a huge problem. Was it because of my own chi, my demonic ability, or something completely different? Or it could be possible that Elder Shin was lying too. I still had a long way to go to reach Mount Hua, and now I had to deal with this. At this point, I started to think that maybe it was my fault that I kept getting into trouble whenever I tried to do something that I can feel the sense of doubt you have, and I'm honestly impressed how you can even think that way after coming this far. Please, stop reading my mind. You only have yourself to blame for being so easy to read. You should know that by now. I got rid of the sound barrier I had previously set up earlier. If I stayed here any longer, the escorts would come to look for me. It's not completely bad for me to be in your mind, and it's not like I enjoy being inside you, but I'm enduring it, so stop your whining and think about how you can solve this situation. How? You said you are going to Mount Hua, and since both the treasure and I originate from that place, maybe you can find the answer there. Could I really find the answer in Mount Hua? I hoped that I could. Especially because I didn't want to stay with this annoying old man any longer, you little brat. I ignored Elder Shin and started making my way back to the camp. Both the beast that was inside me and the old man that was somehow able to put that beast to sleep. Both things were questionable, but in the end, there was nothing I could do here to find a solution, so I had to go to Mount Hua. Chapter 56. Why are you here? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why are you here? It had been 3 days since we started traveling with the crew from Mount Hua. The mountainous roads were so rough and narrow that we'd had to get out of the carriages and proceed on foot. Stranger Grandpa is gone, said Ycol. Who'd been quietly walking beside me. In her hands was the box that held Mount Hua's treasure. Following Ycol.'s disappointed words, Elder Shin popped out, how interesting, she doesn't even seem to have a special ability or anything of the sort. She didn't seem to have noticed the fact that the old man had gone into my body. However, apparently, before I absorbed the treasure's power, the old man had talked with Ycol. From time to time. For some reason, Ycol. Had really sharp senses. Even back when we were looking for the secret vault, she had shown that she was different from the average person. Could this be another form of talent? She is truly talented. To be so talented at such a young age means that she might be able to aim for the title of the world's greatest in the future. How did you come to that conclusion when you only looked at a little girl? A fully grown Ycol. Was more than qualified enough to earn the world's greatest title, but she was still very young right now. She still even had baby fat. That fat will probably never leave with all the yagua she eats. Of course, in my opinion, she looked better with the little bit of fat she had now than how she used to look in my past life. Being able to tease her for it is also a plus. Just a little more. We should be reaching the valley soon. Shin Hyun, who was walking in front of us, called out. Thanks to Mount Hua's crew, the trip was a bit more comfortable as we didn't have to look for the correct path ourselves. And just as Shin Hyun said, we reached the valley after about 2 more hours of walking. It would soon be nighttime again. Thus, we prepared to stop and camp for the night. Young master. While I was sitting close to a river and eating dumplings with Ycol. Young Peng came over and spoke to me. Yes. I had only found out about it recently, the fact that the sword dragon was quite talkative. It was like looking at Pen Wu Jin that spoke a lot. How annoying. The words young Peng said to me were rather unexpected. Once we arrive at our destination, would you like to have a meal together? A meal. I rarely come across a young prodigy that is similar in age to me, so it feels sort of nice. What's his motive? Just by looking at his face, I couldn't really see that he had any ill intentions. But from my experience, guys with innocent-looking faces had the nastiest personalities on the inside, so I felt a bit cautious about him. I don't know if it will be to your liking, but it's the best dumpling restaurant in Shaanxi. Let's go together then. What a nice man he was, you idiot. Also, you said you rarely get to see other prodigies. I've seen them a few times, but never chatted with them much. Everyone seemed to be very hard to approach. Young Peng was probably referring to the 5 dragons and 3 phoenixes. It was understandable that they were like that considering they had been talented individuals since birth who saw each other as rivals. That I can feel the jealousy in you for not having what they have. Can you just please stay quiet? That I in my eyes, you have also reached a point that most kids at your age cannot, so what is the problem? Honesty, Elder Shin's words were understandable when one considered the fact that he had no idea about my regression. He's not reacting to the part about regression. Can he not read my thoughts about regression? He was usually extremely quick at reading my mind whenever I talked badly about him, but he didn't comment about my regression. Thank God. I didn't want to tell him about it. While I was organizing my thoughts, young Peng spoke again. And you also belong to the senior's family. Young Peng's words made me wonder why he kept calling my little sister, senior. Weren't they both third-generation students? I felt that it was a good time to ask now that we were having a conversation. Young Master Young Peng. Young Master, can I ask you something since we are friends now? My words got buried under young Peng's voice. And friends. I didn't think we were that close yet. Young Peng seemed really quick to consider people as friends. On my part, I still wanted to keep a little bit of distance from him. What is it that you want to ask? It's nothing, but, what is he trying to ask me for him to hesitate and scratch his head like that? It was annoying to see how his behavior weirdly matched his handsome face. Young Peng spoke again after hesitating for a short moment. He inquired shyly but also bravely. Would you like to have a duel with me? No, I instantly gave him the answer I always gave to others. Then I thought, isn't that too violent of a request to make considering he was asking me to have a meal with him just a moment ago? Young Peng's reaction was even more problematic. Why? What the fuck do you mean, why? He really didn't know why I denied his request. That made me even more dumbfounded. Why are you asking for a duel all of a sudden? I heard that in order to become closer to one another, a duel is necessary. Is that not true? Who told you such an absurd thing? The lord of the clan. Ahem. Ahem. Elder Shin almost had a seizure because of young Peng's words. The person that told him such an absurd thing was none other than the Lord of Mount Hua. Is that true? Are they really a Taoist clan? Ahem, I mean, he's not completely wrong, right? No matter how I look at it, he definitely is. The old man tried to defend the idea, but it was still wrong. Furthermore, preaching the idea that becoming friends with one another was done by having a duel made them look more like bandits than a Taoist clan. How dare you compare us to bandits? There are no other clans in the world that have the dignity and pride that Mount Hua has. At least speak without stuttering. It was scary how young Peng was looking at me with a strange gaze. At this point I felt certain of it, this guy was just another version of Peng Wujin. So we are not having a duel then. Why do you sound so sad? Stop speaking like you're about to cry. It was annoying to hear a young man speaking like that. Just duel with other students. It wasn't like young Peng was the only student of the 3rd generation. Plus there were probably many more martial artists in the 10. Sect Alliance. Young Peng smiled bitterly at my words. Other students don't really enjoy fighting with me. Oh. It wasn't hard to understand what he meant by that. His monstrous talent basically left the average martial artist trembling in fear. Something like this was especially abundant in this generation. The Sword Dragon. Considering the title he bore, it would be hard for the other students of Mount Hua to compete against him. If Gu Huibi didn't exist then he would most likely have been called the greatest prodigy. It would honestly be a sin if I compared him to someone like the Lightning Sword. The youngest talent of Mount Hua. He was a genius swordsman who had learned to manifest Plum Blossom at a very young age when most only did it at the age of 30. The other third-generation students who trained alongside him probably felt like they were facing a giant wall. They had probably only just learned how to concentrate chi into their swords while this guy could already manifest Plum Blossom with his sword. And no matter what they do, they won't be able to reduce the gap between them and him. Everyone already knew the outcome, so for one to still challenge young Peng to a duel meant that they harbored too much of a martial artist's pride. Would I be fine in the same situation as them? Me constantly being compared to my sisters in my previous life was pretty much what they were going through, but I would assume it was honestly worse for them. Why do you want to duel me anyways? I thought that you would be a good opponent. I felt his eagerness within his sword. The reason why he asked me for a duel was probably that he knew that I was at a similar level as him. The kid has good eyes. Let alone me, Elder Shin, who could directly observe my body, felt the same way. But even so, asking for a duel out of nowhere. Elder Shin spoke to me after reading my hatred for duels. Why not just one duel? You can say that easily just because it's not your business, that it's not like you have anything to lose. Elder Shin was right. I had no reason to deny such a light duel. It was just a duel after all. I had no fear for a loss either. Because if I did, my mental state would have blown up already with all my losses. However, I did not want to lay my hands on Mount Hua. That was all. For what reason are you feeling so guilty? I told you to stop reading my mind. Young master. Young Peng called me with a confused face. I hesitated to respond. No one knew about the things I did to Mount Hua. It was something that only I knew. And I was the only one who would ever know. It was just that, it wasn't something I could just up and ignore. Elder Shin spoke while I was standing in silence. That I don't know why you harbor so much guilt towards Mount Hua, but you can just duel him even if you still feel so bad about it. That you should be happy as a martial artist if you are asked for a duel. I don't know why a young man like you is hesitating. TSK. Might as well cut off your manhood at this point. The fuck, cut off what he said. Those words may have sounded way too aggressive to come from the mouths of a hero of the past, but he wasn't wrong. I calmly stood up and spoke to young Peng. Let's do it, the duel. I guess it won't hurt to play along once in a while. Whoa. Young master. You are going to fight. YC who'd been quietly eating dumplings next to me spoke. She was looking at me with tears in her eyes, so I patted her head softly. Nah, it's not a fight. It's just a way of becoming friends, apparently. Yes, exactly. Of course, it was Mount Hua's, and Mount Hua's way only. YC who was embracing my head pat said, chirped cheerfully. Go and win. I'll try. I managed to find a flat ground for our duel. While I was doing that, young Peng said he was going to let Xinhyun know about it, but when he returned, there was a huge lump on his head, and Xinhyun followed after him. On reaching me, Xinhyun walked forward and bowed. I apologize. He's still not very mature. I don't mind. It's just a duel after all. This was, in all honesty, probably the most normal duel that I was going to have after my regression. Noel.n I honestly couldn't consider the duels I'd previously done duels because my opponents were all basically lunatics. To spectate our duel, Muyin, Xinhyun and some other people from Mount Hua came as well. What's going on here? Apparently young Peng is having a duel with young Master Gu. Right here and now. That guy really is crazy. After he's done, we gotta make sure he can't act on his own by tying him up. Might as well cover his mouth too so he can't breathe. Won't he die then? There's probably a way to revive him if he does. I felt like I was hearing something terrifying. Are you fine with those comments? I asked Young Peng because of the terrifying conversation I had heard, but Young Peng didn't seem to care. It's all good. I'm used to running away. Oh, so it's not his first time. I felt a little anxious because of all the spectators that appeared, but I tried my best to stay calm. Young Peng got into his posture after receiving his wooden sword. Hey, not bad at all. He's well trained. A swordsman's posture showed how long and hard they had trained for. And Young Peng's posture was pretty much perfect. It showed that he not only had monstrous talent, but he'd also put in a lot of effort. I slowly sighed and then wrapped my body with my chi. A red aura was slowly forming around me. It was thanks to Elder Shin that the pink aura I used to have turned back to red. I saw the light in Young Peng's eyes. At the same time, his wooden sword was manifesting an aura as well. It was quite slight, but that was definitely a plum blossom. I guess he has no intention of holding back. He was not even going to enjoy the appetizer and instead went straight into using the plum blossom technique. I bitterly smiled as I hadn't expected him to be this serious. I'm going to get shit on if I don't take this seriously, huh? Begin. After we were both ready, Xinhyun started the duel. Young Peng immediately swung his sword. I focused chi into my feet to dodge his attacks. And as soon as I did that, the match was over. Pow! With the sound that echoed in the forest, dust spread out everywhere. Off! And with a scream, Young Peng flew away. However, I had to stop with a dumbfounded face. Because I didn't do that. I hadn't even gotten close to Young Peng. And all of a sudden I saw that he was sent flying. A surprise attack from someone else. But I didn't even feel any other chi around. I couldn't see because of all the dust that had formed around me, but I felt a presence at the spot Young Peng used to stand in. Ha! I said that without myself even realizing it. It was a familiar presence. What the? It was a presence that should not have been here. Why could I feel the presence of a woman that should have been swinging her sword in Anhui? As the winds blew, the dust started to fade away. Oh! The owner of the presence spoke shortly. She was standing in the spot where Young Peng was supposed to stand. I noticed the mess in her clothing and her hair which made her look like she had just gone through a war. But she still maintained her pale white skin and beauty even with all the mess she had on her. After she found me, her blue eyes locked onto me. Then she smiled. Quite brightly. I found you, her beautiful voice dug into my ears. I was hoping that it was a person that I would welcome, but it was completely the opposite. Finally, I found you. The person who said that with a smile was none other than Namgung by Ah. Chapter 57. There isn't a single normal person. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. There isn't a single normal person. What the hell? I found myself at a loss for words. Why is that crazy girl standing here? We were neither in Shangxi nor Shangxi. We were literally in the middle of a nameless mountain. And yet here at this moment, Namgung by Ah was standing before me. What? I was going to ask what she was doing here, but others seemed to have different intentions. But my thoughts were soon interrupted by a commotion among the people of Mount Hua. Drawing their swords, they converged on by Ah, who they saw as a threat to their community. The air was charged with chi, and I knew I had to act fast. I didn't get a moment to come up with a solution. In a desperate attempt to prevent the tragedy, I raised my voice and shouted. It's been a while. As the swords paused midair, their sharp edges glinting menacingly. Sister by Ah. Amidst that, YC old Ah who was watching ran towards Namgung by Ah and hugged her. Namgung Bai was momentarily taken aback, but she gently started patting Ycol.a's head. Due to her tall height, she was completely able to embrace Ycol.a in her arms. Young Master Gu, you know that woman? Shin Hyun inquired. How should I answer this? Should I just say we are somewhat close? How the hell did she appear out of nowhere anyway? I believed that we wouldn't meet again for a while when we parted ways. I thought that maybe we would meet once because of the marriage arrangement. But here I am, meeting her here of all places. At a nameless mountain that had nothing in it. Did she come looking for me? Nah, there's no way. Namgung Bai.a was deaf when it came to a sense of direction. She was an extreme case at that. She's the type of person to go west when she is told to go east, so it would have to be a pure coincidence for us to meet here. The likelihood of her finding the correct path while searching for someone was slim. Because she literally wasn't capable of doing so. Young Master. Oh. I forgot to answer Shinhyun's question because my mind was occupied with thoughts about Namgung Bai.a. She is just an acquaint fiancé. Ha. What now? Namgung Bai.a's sudden interruption made everyone quiet. What did you just say? I asked Namgung Bai.a again, just in case I misheard it the first time. Namgung Bai.a tilted her head in confusion, wondering why I was acting this way. I heard her wrong, right? I must have. He's my fiancé. I really didn't hear wrong. It seems like I wasn't the only one in shock, as everyone else became silent as well. I especially felt the fiery gaze of other men that glared at me. Stop getting charmed by her beauty for God's sake. Although I said that, even I approved of Namgung Bai.a's beauty. In my past life, I had the privilege of gazing upon Namgung Bai.a's exquisite features for a long time, yet never once did I grow tired of her breathtaking beauty. If it was me from back then, I would have probably drooled if I heard that Namgung Bai.a was my fiancé. Despite her dust-laden skin and disheveled hair, and even amidst the tattered and soiled fabric, Namgung Bai.a's beauty remained unblemished. Her two sparkling blue eyes, reminiscent of diamonds, were fixed solely on me. Though she was not smiling now, I could not help but recall the bright smile that Namgung Bai.a had shown me earlier. So she can smile too, huh? I never once saw her smile in my previous life. I have only ever witnessed her slash and kill her foes with an impassive look, devoid of any discernible emotion. I hate to admit it. But she looks beautiful whenever she smiles. Sis. Ycol.a, who was rubbing her face in Namgung Bai.a's balsam for a while, spoke. Why did you come here? I came looking for him. Who? Namgung Bai.a gradually pointed towards me. She really came here looking for me. How did she? She was the type of person to climb a mountain when she was asked to use a boat. And a person that would travel across a river when she was supposed to climb a mountain. She didn't even know the basics of directions. But she came looking for me, you idiot. Elder Shin, who stayed quiet, suddenly cursed at me. What's making you act up all of a sudden? You really don't feel anything even after looking at the beautiful girl? If so, rather cutting it off, you probably didn't have one to begin with. Why are you talking smack when I didn't even do anything? Just kill yourself at this point. I lightly ignored Elder Shin's words. What's with this old man all of a sudden? I went towards Namgung Bai.a and asked. Lady Namgung, you really came here looking for me? Yes, why? I wanted to see you. What? What did she just? I hope you get blown to death. Please. Just stay. For fuck's sake. Why don't any ghosts take this guy's life? Oh, I'm a ghost too. I became bewildered because of Namgung Bai.a's words. Is she even thinking straight? What is she saying all of a sudden after appearing out of nowhere? What are you talking of? Young Master. Ycol.a approached me, As a result of rubbing her face against Namgung by A's soiled garments, she had inadvertently acquired some dusty marks on her face. What? What's a fiancé? Ha! I was at a loss for words because of her sudden question. What's a fiancé, she asks. Ha, what is a fiancé? Judging from her eyes, it looks like she really doesn't know. How should I answer this? A fiancé is, I would feel guilty if I lied to her. While I was struggling to come up with the best answer, a figure emerged from the tall blades of grass. Ugh, my back. It was none other than young Peng, who was sent flying away. After patting his back, young Peng looked at what was going on. May I ask what's going on? Young Peng, who was looking around, noticed Namgung by and gasped. When Namgung by A's icy face turned towards young Peng, he collapsed on the ground. When I looked at young Peng wondering what was up with him, he looked to be in a weird state. Ha! Flushed cheeks and ears accompanied the wild trembling of his eyes. I felt like I had seen such a face before. Oh! I remember now. It was the same face Gu Jieliab made when he first saw Yseol Dada back then. Wait. Does that mean? While I was looking at young Peng, other people of Mount Hua rushed towards young Peng, who collapsed on the ground. Young Peng. Wake up. Why is he like this all of a sudden? Did he fall headfirst when he was sent flying? You're telling me he's unconscious because he fell headfirst when this guy used to be fine even after getting smacked in the head by a metal bar? He must be feeling weak right now. Should we catch a chicken for him? While I was hearing some absurd solutions, I heard Elder Shin speak that he's done. He won't be able to overcome that. Pardon. Look at that guy's eyes, he already let himself go. Furthermore, he probably has higher standards now that he laid his eyes upon such a beauty. What a poor guy, indeed he is. Those were Elder Shin's last words. I spoke amidst this bizarre situation. So what about the duel? No one responded to my subtle whisper. For fuck's sake. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Soon it turned dark. Each day seemed so short, yet why does Shangxi still feel so far away? I couldn't answer. I briefly washed myself at the valley. Although I was not particularly fond of being drenched, the summer heat demanded it, and with the aid of my chi, it took me little time to dry off. Blah blah TL note. A group of people talking to each other with no context. I noticed a bunch of men grouped up together while I was making my way back to the camp. I first thought it was the people from Mount Hua, but some of Gu clan's members were also mixed in the group. What are they doing? I was wondering what they were all looking at. And as it turned out, they were all looking at Namgung by crazy. For God's sake. Elder Shin spoke out of nowhere when he was quiet the whole time, for God's sake indeed. What are you saying all of a sudden? You idiot, you really don't feel anything after seeing that. I wondered what he was talking about, but I already knew the answer. Namgung by was talking to Yseol while sitting in front of the campfire. After cleansing herself thoroughly, she donned fresh and tidy attire. She didn't have any spare clothes, so we gave her our servant's spare clothing, but did that attire always look like that? It looked way more luxurious compared to when the servants wore it. She looked beautiful even in her dirty attire, so her neat appearance now made her shine even more than before. Plus, she was sitting next to Yseol which made it look like I was staring at a painting. So it was understandable why all of these guys were acting like that. It kind of feels wholesome. It definitely didn't look the best. Senior, this is the first time I've seen such a beautiful person. Are all other girls like this in other regions? Namgung clan is in Anhui. Wasn't Shinmil also from Anhui? So it's just her that's beautiful then. Hey, I'll make sure I'll tell Shinmil what you just said. Ha. Wait, senior. What are they even doing? Young. Chapter 58. The Fall of Plum Blossom Dragon, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Fall of Plum Blossom Dragon, 1. Right now. Young Peng nodded upon hearing my question as my brows furrowed. I could understand him being a little disappointed at us not being able to finish our duel earlier, but no matter how I looked at it, he didn't seem to have pure intentions any longer. He's really bad at lying, huh? Due to how direct he was and how honest he was with his emotions, I felt like I should call him innocent. Nah, he just hasn't matured yet. I let out a cough at Elder Shin's words. It surprised me that he of all people could say those words. Should a man who used to be the Lord of Mount Hua really talk bad about his own people? Now you treat me as the real divine sword. Elder Shin laughed at my words. Being honest with one's emotions doesn't help anyone in this world. You may be young, but I believe that you understand a little about what I mean. A little. I related to Elder Shin's words more than anyone possibly could. Then again, that fact wasn't hard to realize by anyone who has lived in this martial world. And because of that, I knew young Peng had most likely been spoiled from childhood that it's not always right to hide things from a child. Plus, they should have been stricter with a kid with so much talent. It was unexpected to see Elder Shin feeling so disappointed. I assumed that he had a much more aggressive outlook on raising children compared to the current generation because he'd been through war himself. Of course, with one as beautiful as she is, anyone would be charmed no matter how hard they trained. I looked at Namgung by after hearing Elder Shin's remarks. Her white hair with blue tints glimmered even more in the moonlight. And because of the campfire that was in front of her, her face was charmingly illuminated. She was truly beautiful. Unlike Seol who still hadn't lost her baby fat, Namgung Bai had already grown up. She made me wonder if a human could really be this beautiful. Like I'd thought in my past life, with her beauty alone, it shouldn't have been strange for her to be famous throughout not just Anhui, but the whole world. And yet, the opposite was the case, even when one factored in her monstrous talent. Was this also the Namgung clan's doing? Either way, I could understand young Peng's actions to an extent that I'm more astounded by the fact you feel nothing about the fact that she is your fiancée. I smirked at Elder Shin's words. After all, I was no different. Namgung Bai was definitely beautiful right now, but her beauty was lacking compared to her days as the Demon Sword Queen. The icy aura surrounding the demon sword exuded a dreamy atmosphere. Even other demonic humans that had lost their sanity would stop when they laid their eyes upon the demon sword. But even then, there was a reason why I felt uncomfortable with her. The demonic sword was especially known for being violent even amongst other demonic humans. Even the demon blade who relished in violence avoided the demonic sword queen. When she fought her own clan, when she fought in many wars, and when she even fought other demonic humans. The demon sword from my memories had shown to harbor extreme hatred for humankind. Her way of fighting was extremely violent. She didn't just aim to kill but tried to deliver death in the most painful way possible. To give an example, I'd seen her cutting off one's genitals during a battle. And it wasn't just one time I saw her doing that. It got to the point that the heavenly demon itself told her to tone it down a notch. Not that she listened to those words anyways. But, what kind of demonic human didn't even bother to listen to the words that came directly from the heavenly demon itself? That lunatic. What was even scarier was the fact that, no matter what she did, she never, ever showed killing intent. Was there anything dreadful than that? I was reminded of how she would cause trouble wherever she went, and the fact that I had to clean up after her always gave me headaches. What kind of thoughts are you having for me to feel so uncomfortable? Nothing much. However, if I had to point out something, it would be that the Namgung Bai in this life was a completely different person than the demon sword from my memories. At least, that was what I tried to tell myself. Namgung Bai lifted her head up and looked into my eyes after noticing my gaze upon her. She looked so similar to the demon sword and yet had such a completely different aura. It was almost like they were two different people. The Namgung by before me looked empty and dull. I wonder what happened for her to have become so reckless in my past life. And just like that, I found myself curious about something I'd been constantly avoiding. Young Master. I woke up at Young Peng's call. Yes. Why was he, oh, right, the duel. I looked at Young Peng and asked, it looked like you injured your back earlier, will you be fine with it? An injury like this is nothing to me. I understood that he had a firm will, but it looked like he'd let his emotions take control. The people from Mount Hua who had been watching us from afar started walking towards us upon noticing Young Peng's disappointing behavior. I stared at Young Peng for a while and then uttered. Let's do it. Ha! Not just Elder Shin, everyone around us seemed to be surprised at my answer. Was it really that shocking? You were thinking of denying the duel up until now, what made you change your mind? It's nothing much really. It wasn't anything big that changed my mind. Like Elder Shin said, I'd had no intention of accepting the duel at first, but looking at Young Peng made me feel a little bad for him. Then Elder Shin laughed, you try your best to hide it, but you really aren't good at lying. Can you just let it pass, please? That I will, since it's not my place to stop you. I'm just curious about why a guy like you who seems younger than that kid over there feels so guilty towards Mount Hua. I couldn't let Elder Shin know the reason why. Because I actually accepted Young Peng's duel, the Mount Hua crew who'd been walking towards us with the intent of scolding Young Peng were forced to come to an awkward stop. Well, considering the flames burning in Shinhian's eyes, Young Peng's scolding seemed inevitable. As I stood up to follow Young Peng, someone firmly grabbed my wrist. It was Namgung by I tried to escape her grasp, but her grip was deceptively tight. Lady Namgung, what are you doing? You are going to duel. Yes, as you can see. Namgung by A's eyes widened at my response. It was the first time I'd seen her eyes widen in shock. She then spoke. What about me? Oh, Namgung by A's voice showed that she felt a bit betrayed. Was this really a big deal for her? Do you want to fight Young Peng instead? I had a goal when I accepted Young Peng's duel. But now that I looked at it, it would be fine too if Namgung by did it instead. For some reason, Young Peng looked more excited when I made that offer. I wouldn't mind that either. No, Namgung by A's swift response was like a splash of cold water on Young Peng's enthusiasm, and the chilly tone she used in her response was surprising to me. Because of that, Young Peng turned pale in an instant, as if her rejection had somehow given him an internal wound. A person that goes crazy over skilled swordsmen rejected a duel with the dragon sword. I don't even use swords. I felt something strange when Namgung by slightly turned her head away. Is she sulking? Is she actually? She's really sulking because I didn't fight with her. You really are a son of a bitch. Elder Shin cursed at me as if he'd been waiting for that moment. It was the second worst thing he'd called me, coming right after Mantis. Can a Taoist really use such words? I'm already dead, so who cares? You should also get rid of that stereotypical way of thinking. So it's my fault now. Yes, I'll have you know that a certain monk almost got kicked out of the clan because he was secretly stealing meat, so what's the problem with a Taoist cursing a little? I really didn't need to know that. The dark past of someone who went down in history. It was even more absurd because these words came directly from the ghost of Mount Hua's former lord. I didn't want to think about it any further, so I returned my focus to Young Peng. Young Master, will you be able to fight? The lights in Young Peng's eyes came back just a little when I asked him. Yeah, of course I can. I will. For some reason, he looked more heated than before. This guy was more of a hassle than I thought. Once you are blinded by jealousy, you can't see anything. I didn't disagree with Elder Shin's words. It was the most relatable thing he'd said in a while. Crunch. I heard a crunching sound. I'd stepped on an old branch. The weather wasn't the best as we were currently in the midst of summer, but since it was after nightfall, I didn't feel hot thanks to the night breeze. We stood on opposite sides at a reasonable distance, and in the middle stood Shin-hyun. Just as we'd done before. Shin-hyun had his anger towards Young Peng written all over his face, but I wasn't sure Young Peng could not it. Oh, never mind, he was aware and was avoiding Shin-hyun's gaze on purpose. I guessed that he knew that once the duel came to an end, Shin-hyun's anger would descend on him in all of its fury. We looked at each other for a while, and I noticed that Young Peng's expressions were now a little different from the one he had earlier. I apologize for my actions, said Young Peng. His voice was quiet like a mouse squeaking, much unlike before. Upon hearing Young Peng's words I got curious. Why all of a sudden? Well, I was told not to let my emotion control my actions, but I've embarrassed myself again. Did he wake up thanks to the cold breeze? Even then, it was surprising that he realized it so quickly. At least he's not the worst kind. You think so? He can see and judge himself objectively, and that's something that is necessary for a martial artist. He did indeed live up to his roots originating from a Taoist clan. Although I could still see Young Peng peeking at Namgung by from time to time. Wait, where did YCOL go? I had assumed she would be next to Namgung by but she wasn't there. She's probably playing around somewhere else. Was what I decided to think. It's understandable he is weak to the charm of a woman considering his young age. You've started defending him all of a sudden. If that's the case, I'm younger than Young Peng. Ahem. I have to defend my own family. Plus, no matter how I look at it, you may look younger physically, but your mental age doesn't seem to be that of a child. I didn't respond to Elder Shin. I would feel morally wrong if I lied to him about my real age. After stretching, Shin-hyun spoke. Begin. I was expecting Young Peng to charge right at me as soon as the duel began, but instead, he was observing me. He felt something back then. Before he was sent flying by Namgung by he got to experience my movements as well in that brief instance. Great observation by him. If he continues to grow like this, the future of Mount Hua will be in his hands. Elder Shin complimented. I initially thought that maybe he was biased because he was also from Mount Hua, but then I realized that perhaps he was able to clearly detect Young Peng's intent because he was from Mount Hua. Rustle. Something fell close to Young Peng. The thing that fell and crumbled away as soon as it hit the ground looked like a plum blossom. And suddenly, plum blossoms rapidly surrounded Young Peng and began swirling about as if they were caught in a breeze. To make your sword blossom and to manifest the chi of plum blossoms. That was the dream of Mount Hua's martial artists and the first goal to achieve as a martial artist that hailed from that clan. The plum blossom sword art. It was the first time I'd seen Young Peng like that, to have such mastery over the art of plum blossoms at that age, such monstrous talent. Elder Shin spoke heatedly with a surprised tone. While I was just looking at Young Peng, Elder Shin continued, want some tips on how to beat him. I almost smirked at his absurd words. I thought you said you have to support your side earlier. At this rate you are just going to get beat up and collapse, and you won't be able to achieve the reason why you accepted the duel. That was his intention, huh? Elder Shin. What's up? How far can you see? I asked what he felt when he looked at both myself and Young Peng. Elder Shin became quiet for a moment. Could he see what we were fully capable of? I can't really feel much with the current state I'm in. It seemed like he couldn't read that much into it. I nodded slightly to Elder Shin's words as that was a good thing. It would be a little bit of a hassle if he really could see everything. The plum blossom chi that Young Peng was emanating engulfed the whole area around me. It seemed beautiful and warm on the outside, but the sharp chi felt like myriad swords were drawn against me. It was already impressive that he could produce this much chi, but to put so much of his willpower into it was another impressive feat. He really lived up to the name of Mount Hua's best. I shall start, young master. Not going to give a weaker opponent a chance to attack first. I did not once think that you were a weaker opponent. Ha! He was different from those other guys. I was honestly sorry for comparing him to guys like Gu Jieliub and Namgung Chanjin. I'll be starty. Young Peng stopped his movements when he was about to start. I felt his emotions as his eyes widened and his breathing roughened. What's this? I heard Elder Shin as well. He even stuttered because of how shocked he was. Blaze. My destructive flame arts saw me release a crazy amount of chi from my body, and I didn't try to focus it into one place, instead letting it flow everywhere. The heat gradually devoured the area around us. And the raging heat that had no intention of cooling down, swallowed down the plum blossom chi that was lingering in the air. The plum flower leaves started to burn away because of my blazing chi. Once it had burnt away all of his chi, the blazing chi started swirling around my body. I can even do stuff like this now that my chi has increased. I couldn't dare to even try to do something like this previously because I couldn't afford to. Yet now I was able to do it so easily. The blazing wheel. It wasn't necessarily a hard skill to use. It was a simple skill that let me form a flame wheel around my body. However, it was a skill that consumed a ton of my chi, so it wasn't a skill that I used a lot. I was doing a good job controlling it now, but I wouldn't be able to use it for a long time. I failed to realize that a real monster was right in front of my eyes. He was overpraising me. Although Elder Shin's compliment initially brought me joy, I couldn't help but feel conflicted. I honestly didn't expect myself to go this far, but I was a bit excited as it had been a while. Young Peng, who was standing before me, was visibly shocked at the sight of his plum flowers burning away one by one. And Xinhyun, who was watching from the side, showed a similar surprise. Young Master Young Peng. He flinched at my call. It seemed like I'd woken him from his own thoughts. Here I come. I didn't wait for his response as I leaped towards him with flames swirling around me, as a huge fire engulfed young Peng instantly. Chapter 59. The Fall of Plum Blossom Dragon, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Fall of Plum Blossom Dragon, 2. Genius. The people representing that metric had become rather common as we entered the generation of shooting stars. The word itself was self-explanatory. A genius was an individual who was much better and more talented than his peers in all aspects. They were the people that could just grab a sword and rapidly break through wall after wall that stood in their way toward martial excellence. There wasn't a generation where a genius didn't exist. For example, the Heavenly Venerables were the 3 geniuses of their time. The 7 Iron and 3 Fists were the 10 masters of the world that were not short of being called geniuses themselves. No matter how hard a genius tried to hide their talent, it would always find a way to shine. Even if they didn't want to flaunt their talent around, the world would immediately realize their talent just by looking at their movements. This was a matter of fact, unchanged no matter how much time had passed. And now, there were the 5 dragons and 3 phoenixes. These young prodigies were the stars of this generation. They were all individuals worthy of being hailed as geniuses. Flawless since birth. Of course, that didn't mean they didn't put effort into improving themselves. It just meant that their efforts yielded far greater results compared to the efforts of an average person. I could clearly see that fact in the sword dragon that stood before me, the traits of a genius. He was the youngest plum blossom swordsman, while simultaneously being the greatest prodigy of the Mouthua sect. I couldn't even begin to imagine just how much weight those 2 titles held. Only people who were naturally talented to the extreme whilst also having reached a certain level would find themselves qualified for the title of Plum Blossom Swordsman. That was what it meant to be able to use the plum blossom chi, and to be able to make one's sword blossom with plum flowers. That was what it meant to awaken the art of Mouthua. And young Peng, who wasn't even at the age of 20 yet, whilst still being a 3rd generation student, had already reached that point, showing just how monstrous his natural talent was. And yet, that same young Peng, Pao, was being pushed back by a boy much younger than him in age. Ugh! Shin Hyun was just unable to believe what he was seeing with his own eyes. The heat that was being produced by the boy made it hard for him to even breathe, and he watched with wide eyes how young Peng's plum blossoms were being engulfed and incinerated by the blazing fire the boy manifested. This wasn't just a simple matter of using his chi efficiently and in the best way possible, or about positioning his body in a certain way. No, it was quite simply a sheer difference in power. How is a little kid so powerful? Gu Yangchen of the Gu clan. He wasn't someone that was known throughout the world yet, he didn't even have a title. Shin Hyun knew about the Gu clan. It was the clan of a master martial artist, the Tiger Warrior, and it was also the home of the Sword Phoenix who held the title of the greatest prodigy in the world of this generation. And it was also the clan of his martial sister. So Shin Hyun knew a bit about the clan already. He'd expected nothing less of the boy, considering that he shared the same blood as the Tiger Warrior and the Sword Phoenix. Well, he could have just been a boy that didn't meet his father's expectations, but Shin Hyun hadn't thought that way when he first laid his eyes upon Gu Yangchen. But still, for him to be this strong is still unexpected. Flame arts were extremely hard to control. It was a martial skill that was so destructive that oftentimes the user of the art wouldn't be able to withstand its explosive power. Because of how wild the chi became, it also took a huge toll on the user's body. And although the art was more destructive and powerful when compared to other arts thanks to its explosiveness, it was equally hard to master and made reaching higher realms of the art a burdensome task as it slowly destroyed the martial artist's body. But what about the boy before him? Cold sweat flowed down Shin Hyun's chin. It was already impressive enough that he was able to produce so much chi that it pressured the whole area surrounding him, but when one considered the fact that he had managed to not harm anything even as he used such a destructive art, that only meant that he had perfect control over his flame arts. Young Peng tried his best to avoid the engulfing flames, but it wasn't easy for him because Gu Yangchen gave him no space to evade his onslaught. One of the most important things, when it came to a duel, was the distance between two fighters. And it applied especially in this fight as this was a fight where one fighter was a sword wielder while the other used his fists. It was a clash between two principles. The fist user sought to reduce the distance as much as possible, while the sword wielder sought to gain as much distance as possible. And Gu Yangchen never let young Peng gain that distance. He knew full well how to go against a sword user. Young Peng clenched his teeth and focused the flow of his chi into his feet and suddenly rushed forward. He who had been constantly stepping back from Gu Yangchen was now instead charging at him. Even as he moved with urgency, young Peng's sword retained its elegance. His strikes were precise and heavy while also being fast and accurate. The Mount Hua sect had very complicated movements in their sword arts, so you needed at least a few years to learn those movements. But young Peng had been able to master those movements not too long after he first saw them. That had been the day when everyone acknowledged that young Peng was the greatest prodigy of the Mount Hua sect. The end of his sword was light and sharp, and with every step young Peng took, the mark of a plum flower appeared on the ground he tread. The mark of plum flowers. There was a certain level that martial artists of Mount Hua had to reach in order for them to form the mark of plum flowers wherever they touched. It was also the standard required for one to become a plum blossom swordsman, and was the symbol of becoming a true martial artist of the Mount Hua sect. Shin Hyun nodded his head following the mark's appearance. It may have looked like he was getting pushed back by Gu Yangchen's flames, but young Peng was finding his way back into the fight and was starting to fight back. His sword strikes formed many images of plum flowers. The plum blossoms were now pressing down the raging flames that were once pushing back young Peng. The quintessential sword art of the Mount Hua sect was being beautifully displayed through young Peng's hand. His movements were elegant, the chi his sword held was sharp, and the blooming of plum flowers followed his sword strikes. As expected. To win against the sword dragon is, youth. Ha! Shin Hyun's eyes widened. It was due to the scream that leaked out of young Peng's mouth. All of a sudden, he thought that he saw Gu Yangchen's fist digging into young Peng's ribs. Xinhyun tried harder to enhance his vision by focusing more of his chi into his eyes, but the flames blocked his vision and made it hard for him to see clearly through them. This, in turn, meant that Xinhyun, a second-generation student of the Mount Hua sect, was struggling to see through the flames that were made by a mere boy in his youth. How dense does his chi have to be for it to be like this? He had thought at first that the flames were being pressed down by the blooming plum flowers produced by young Peng, but Xinhyun realized quickly that his assumption had been incorrect. It wasn't that the flames were being pressed down by the ever-blooming plum blossoms, but instead, the raging flames rampaging all over were being reduced on purpose. The flames definitely covered less area now, but the power behind them had become much denser than before. The blooming plum blossoms were slowly starting to burn away. Then, all of a sudden, something flew out from the dome of blazing flames. It was the wooden sword that young Peng had been using in this fight. Pow! Ugh! Not long after, young Peng himself was sent flying out of the flames, the sound of an explosion accompanying his flight. After rolling on the ground and coming to a stop sometime after, young Peng groaned under his breath and struggled to move his body. Whoosh! The flames that covered the area slowly shrank down until what remained of them had now circled around the now visible figure of Gu Yangchen. As he had been in the heat for so long, a lot of steam could be seen visibly emanating from his body. The flowers that were about to blossom around him were being rapidly engulfed and incinerated by the destructive flames. It showed that the flower that just bloomed from a tree was powerless when faced against the power of flames. Young Peng's plum blossoms didn't even get the chance to bloom as they slowly burnt to ashes. In the face of the groaning young Peng as he was looking at the blazing figure of Gu Yangchen, one could see a visible mix of myriads of emotions, ranging from fear and confusion to even doubt. Tisk, the click of a tongue broke the silence that had engulfed the surroundings. Young Peng, who was looking at Gu Yangchen with shaky eyes, couldn't take it anymore and turned his head away. Xinhyun didn't know why young Peng was acting like that, so he had no choice but to turn his gaze toward Gu Yangchen to understand the reason behind his junior brother's actions. And then, he was able to realize the reason why young Peng had avoided looking at Gu Yangchen. In Gu Yangchen's eyes as he looked down at young Peng, was present the emotions of utter disappointment that were visible for everyone to see. There were many things one could list when it came to the strengths of a talented individual, but, it was inevitable that they had weaknesses as well. Even if they were talented, they would need to have something more than just talent or else they would eventually get blocked by a wall they couldn't surpass at one point in their lives. And because the previous walls had all been so easy for them to overcome, when they came face to face with a real wall that they weren't able to overcome easily like the others, they would eventually opt to just give up. Young Peng was a genius, there was no doubt about that fact. I was more certain about that fact than anyone as I had seen what heights he was able to reach in my previous life. But he ultimately wasn't able to overcome the wall. When it came to natural talent, he was at the same level as Gu Huibi or perhaps even surpassed her in that regard. And even now, even in this life, that was still the case. Not everyone was capable of becoming a plum blossom swordsman. It was a level, a bar, that was only achievable by going through endless training and enlightenments. It meant that he was, at the very least, a first-rate martial artist. He was a first-rate martial artist before reaching the age of 20. So it was understandable why he was so confident about himself. It's funnier since this is coming from you. I was an exception in this regard as I had the help of miracles that also included the mysterious regression itself. Not that anyone else including Elder Shin knew about that. Anyways, geniuses were very full of themselves and it was an inevitable fact. Gu Jieliab, Namgung Chanjin, and even Gu Huibi. They were all different compared to average human beings, were all better than them in more or less all aspects, and that sense of superiority they received from that fact easily made them prideful. But this also served as one of the biggest poisons for them. Young Peng, as a person, wasn't bad. He was respectful and had some sense in him that was absent in most geniuses. He'd let his emotions get to him because of his young age, but that might be fixed as he grew older. However, even that young Peng was full of himself because of his talent. And because of that, he eventually faced a wall that he couldn't overcome, and ultimately chose to give up. That was what had happened in my previous life. What are you doing? At my forceful question, young Peng's shoulder trembled subconsciously. Why aren't you picking up your sword again? I saw his wooden sword that lay flat on the ground. He may have caused plum blossoms to bloom with his sword, but it was just a hollow blooming with no density within it. That meant that it hadn't been a long time since he'd learned the art. What a monster. That was probably the biggest reason why young Peng was defeated right now. You say it like it's easy. You think it's possible to use such a weak sword to break through an opening and attack. It certainly wasn't easy, as it required him to have no nervousness or fear for it to be possible in the first place. This was more of a matter of experience rather than talent. Experience that you would only be able to get when you were in the middle of a battlefield that required you to break through many opponents and attacks that would unceasingly come your way. I slowly walked towards young Peng. Young Peng's eyes still harbored doubts about the result of the duel. Why did every genius show those exact same eyes when I beat them in a duel? You insisted that you really wanted to duel, so I had high expectations, but I'm disappointed, Master Young Peng. High expectations my ass. I felt like I was going to puke because of my absurd lies. The way to overcome oneself. Pride is in fact pretty simple. If they couldn't overcome it themselves, someone else would need to destroy it for them. Once they realized that there would always be someone else that reigned over their talent, they would naturally learn their lesson. Of course, during the process, they would fall into despair, and had to decide whether to wallow in it, to ignore it, to continue to live with that same sense of pride. Or to clench their teeth and stand back up. I would have preferred it if Namgung Bai sparred with him instead of me. But since she sulked and became grouchy. It's true that you didn't have to fight him yourself. Why say this now when you wanted me to do it the whole time? You were the one that volunteered because of the guilt you feel towards Mount Hua. I'm still curious as to why you feel this way. You told me you weren't going to ask about it, didn't you? You really are a rotting piece of shit, you know that. Namgung Chanjin was someone who continued to live with his arrogance. But young Peng was surely different. Even if he'd grown up while being called a genius his whole life in Mount Hua, he still wasn't very spoiled. Young Peng, who'd been on the floor, struggled to stand up. He picked up the wooden sword next to him. Then the limping young Peng slowly positioned his hands. It was a sign of defeat. I lost. Unlike the others, he didn't make any excuses for his loss. He just admitted his defeat with a weak and pitiful voice. This guy really was as clean as a sheet. I wondered if I should say anything more, but I thought that he would struggle to speak anymore, so I showed the same gesture to him and turned around. This much is enough. Maybe it's because of the way you look, but that kinda fits you. You realize you are pretty much talking shit, right, Elder Shin? Of course, I am, you little brat. You thought I was complimenting you. I didn't know how young Peng would think of this, but I felt pretty refreshed since it had been a while since I dueled someone. They would clean up the mess, so I was just going to go to sleep, or so I'd thought. Namgung Bai blocked my way, and after looking at me for a while, spoke out loud. Now do it with me. Do what, you lunatic?